we got this. All right, so this goes first. Hi.
How you doing?
C. Uh-huh.
Apparently, it says revised. Okay. Get rid of this. Everybody good? Here we go. Good evening. This is the Ridgewood Village Council.
One minute. We're ready.
Good.
Yep.
Let's take another swing at this. Good evening. This is the Ridgewood Village Council Public Workshop meeting. The date is May 3rd, 2023. The time is 7:32 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd. Here. Mayor Vagianis.
Here, will you all please join us in a flag salute? We'll now begin public comments.
Limited to 3 minutes per person, 40 minutes in total. Please state your name and address.
Lori Weber, 235 South Irving Street. Good evening.
Good evening.
At the April 26th public meeting, Ms. Winograd asserted that the Board of Education should help pay for the West Glen Avenue sidewalk project. She addressed that suggestion toward her right directly to Mr. Whites, the council liaison to the Board of Education, after which she reached for some papers on her left. Shortly after, Ms. Winograd stood up at her place at the dais, as a few of our newer council members tend to do during the meetings. She stood in place for a while, then leaned forward and looked down toward her right again and saw Mr. Whites get up and exit the dais. Ms. Winograd immediately grabbed the papers to her left and started after Mr. Whites. She hesitated, put the papers back down, looked toward Mr. Whites again, and then hurried off the dais after him. This was not simply two people needing to use the restroom in tandem like kindergartners. The true nature of Ms. Winograd's actions is clearly demonstrated in the meeting footage. Ms. Winograd's actions demonstrated her intent to violate the Open Public Meetings Act, which mandates that all communication between council members during the course of a public meeting must take place in front of the public. Indeed, if there is not already a policy in place regarding this type of occurrence, clearly Ms. Winograd's actions point to the necessity for one. Ms. Winograd asserted that because students would walk on the sidewalks on their way to school, the Board of Education should help pay for them. I cannot state strongly enough what an affront that is to those who care about our schools. How completely and utterly out of touch Ms. Winograd is with the financial demands that our Board of Education faces in order to provide our students with the best education possible while maintaining facilities that actually are their responsibility. Ms. Winograd, our schools are not a funding source to make up for Village Council's shortfalls due to the Council's failure to prioritize safety issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Just to be clear, Ms. Winograd did not follow me into the men's room.
Hi, good evening. Ellie Groover, 229 South Irving. As I told Mr. Rogers, got to be something in the water on that street. Makes us all get up. Two things.
One second, Lori. Ellie, we're just resetting time clock. Thank you.
Okay, two things tonight. First of all, at the combination open space and parks and recreation meeting, it was stated that all the new properties should be quote-unquote money-making. I believe that was the exact word. And Nancy Bigelow said, yes, her programs are money-making. Well, if they're money-making, then I'm looking at the budget, and it's a very strange way to have something money-making if we're paying $401,000, $54,000, $153,000 total, counting Graydon, counting programs, $177,000, on and on. I really want to question why it's necessary for any new facility to be money-making. They produce revenue, I agree, but you could have a building produce revenue and still cost the village, as shown by Parks and Rec. I just wanted to clear that up. I don't think you should use the word money-making ever again for any of your programs. And Ms. Bigelow said she was money-making too, but that's a total wrong term. But the second thing I'm really here for is, way back in 2008, there was a report commissioned by the village when David Fund was mayor. It was originally called Shore de Palma, but I think they went out of business for some sort of trickery, and it was redone by a company called CMX. It had an inventory of every single school, how much land there is, and a suggestion what to do with the property. This program, we paid, I think at the time, I think it might have been $35,000. I can't remember. But all I know is it was never formally adopted, which was a mystery. Shedler wasn't bought then, so it's not on here. So even though it came out 2008, they worked on it, I think, for a couple of years before. This report shows what could be done for fields at many of the schools, including Glen, and it gives a list of exactly how many fields there are, like the Rossi that you know, okay? But I think instead of rushing ahead with Shedler, there are other fields. I mean, I remember when they suggested changing the Hawes Field, Pleasant Hawes Field, into a larger baseball field. They already have a field there, and it's well used. The residents got up and said, we do not want a bigger field here. We have concerns about wetlands, we have concerns about traffic, it's a dead-end street in one part, and the council listened to them. But apparently, the people who live in Shedler do not count. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ellie.
Hi, Niti Mystery, 416 Colwell Court. I'd like to try to read a statement for someone and then add some of my own if I have enough time. I'm going to start with...
did you give your address? Did I miss it?
416 Colwell Court.
Thank you.
This is on behalf of Balaji Yelavali. He writes, Dear Council members, we are residents of 143 West Glen Avenue. We have been unable to attend meetings in person as my wife Sujata has had a knee injury, and we have not got our turn to speak online yet about the project. Our son is autistic and nonverbal and needs adult supervision to ensure his safety at all times. On our request, the autistic individual signs were installed by the town engineer on Glen Ave a few years ago. We have a companion dog for him. We take him for walks on Glen and over onto Heights Road. We are aware we will not have a sidewalk on our side of West Glen, but we are really looking forward to the completion of the sidewalk project up to S Hill Road on the other side, as it will help our family cross the road at our home itself and safely navigate West Glen for our daily walks with our son and his companion dog. There are numerous occasions when we've almost been hit by vehicles while walking down portions of the road bereft of a sidewalk. The stretch between Alpine and Heights is the most dangerous, and we have feared for the safety of our son and our dog multiple times on our own safety while trying to keep them both safe from approaching vehicles. We dread to think of the day where any one of us, including our dog, is hit by a speeding vehicle or a driver loses control. As residents of the village, we all deserve to be safe, just as safe as other residents. We implore you to please complete the Glen Ave sidewalk project for the safety of the residents on West Glen and the community. And I just wanted to add a little bit of my own. Again, thank you for revisiting the sidewalk project. I appreciate the flexibility you're all showing. There's one thing that was said last week that I wanted to just respond to. Mayor Vagianos, you said that if you did 400 feet of new sidewalk this year, that would be more than that had been done in 7 years. That's not true. The previous council, which you were a part of, just in the last year completed the stretch between Alpine and North Monroe. That was brand new sidewalk installed. That was 870 feet roughly. And then from the top of North Monroe to that tree is about 230. So just within the last year or so, that was almost 1,100 feet of brand new sidewalk. So if you guys just matched what they did, that would be done. That's all that's really left is between like 1,100 and 1,200 feet. And then that was a point I wanted to make. And really quickly, to just talk about the Board of Ed real quick, I have been there, done that with the Board of Ed. Years ago, we started appealing with the Village Council like 12 years ago. I don't remember who the mayor was. They said, we can't build there because of the creek. Ask the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed said, we can't build sidewalks, that's the village's responsibility. And it was ping-ponged back and forth between the two boards for a while. After that, a few years ago, if you remember, I appealed to the Board of Ed again. I'm sorry. Anyway, the point is the sidewalks, the buses would be a Band-Aid for students. The sidewalks would be a solution for the entire community because it's not just the kids that are at risk, it's the entire community. So the sidewalks would make everyone safer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rorick Hallaby, 1 Franklin Avenue. Two things. One, the disaster that is Shedler. There is so much nonsense being bandied about concerning Shedler that I believe strongly the Village Council should hire an independent law firm to prepare a white paper on the Shedler project. The paper will review the history of the project and include the what, the when, the why, the how much, etc. A thorough review of the project that will, once and for all, answer all the important issues facing the project. All to be done by an independent firm with no vested interest. How to pay for it? From the Shedler capital budget. You can find money. The present Village Council, in my opinion, has been exemplary in its openness and forthrightness. But we are being drowned with what I call Orwellian newspeak, and too many village residents are being confused. Orwellian newspeak, a good example is the lead sentence in the shedlerpark.com website, which states, citizens will be stripped of the right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. American history will be destroyed. A green ecosystem will be clear-cut, and wildlife will be decimated. To which I say, give me a break. Excuse me. Another example of Orwellian newspeak is the support organization that refers to the house as the historic Zabriskie Shedler house. The, I can see that underlined, bold, and in italic. I have with me the filing by Connolly and Hickey. I have reviewed it. In my humble opinion, the historic designation is a stretch by any imagination and can apply to a good 5% of the houses in Ridgewood. So I would just, my advice to people is to just calm it down and let's get a white paper that will include all the facts that we need to have. Now, the second subject I want to talk about is the Policy Array Citizens Guide to Public Comment, which I look forward to hearing. I have on more than one occasion complimented the mayor for the wonderful tone he has set in running respectful meetings, devoid of acrimony, rudeness, and frankly, the theatrics that always succeeded in sucking the oxygen from the room. And I speak as a veteran with more points of order thrown at me than anyone else I know. Frankly, if I got a medal for every point of order thrown at me, I don't think I could stand up. I'd keel over. Yes, I believe in decorum, good manners, but also believe in the First Amendment. In all candor, I did not come to this country to bite my tongue. Whatever policy is decided on should work both ways. It should apply to those on the dais as well as those on the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Rurik.
Good evening. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Well, I'm here to agree with Mr. Hallaby. How about that? I definitely am interested to hear this discussion about how the public is going to be allowed to behave. But what I would like to say is in your proposed document, we cannot make personally offensive or abusive comments. Quite frankly, my neighbor made an impassioned statement about what she perceives to be a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act, and that was responded to by a sarcastic comment, not funny. She in no way suggested the two council people were going into the bathroom together. Her suggestion was serious. To her, it was very impassioned. If you're going to start dictating whether we can be sarcastic or smile or clap or call out or whatever, you better police yourselves as well, because what you did to Miss Weber was really rude. And that comes on the heels of stopping her from saying somebody's name, which is a violation of her rights 3 or 4 weeks ago. Thank you.
Good evening. Chris Dobson, 48 Eaton Court, Ridgewood, New Jersey. It's been years since I've been to a meeting like this, because I'm always traveling, but over the last few years, a lot of the roads have been upgraded and paved, only for the gas company to come back and dig it back up. And then and I'm sorry, I've been away, so I don't know if this has been addressed previously, but then the other half of the road is repaved. So, of course, I give examples like Fairfield, Pleasant, Glen, you all know it. So I was just wondering if a policy for the town has been instituted where before they pave a road, they contact utility companies to ensure that this occurrence isn't repeated, because I'm sure your job is to protect taxpayers' money, and I don't know if the utilities companies have been reimbursing the town to repave the road. So that's one of my questions. And the second one, Linwood Avenue from 17 coming in. It is the entrance into Ridgewood, and it's in horrible condition, but it sets a tone for, one, residents who are coming in, but also persons who are coming from out of town. So I really think that road needs to be repaved at some point. So once again, thank you guys for all the work you're doing, and hope to get an update on my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Cynthia OKeefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. So I actually wasn't going to say anything tonight, believe it or not. I'm usually never at a loss for words, but I have a sore throat. But I want to react a little bit to the comment that I just heard about Shedler. So two things. You know, I think I've talked about safety, health, and the environment, you know, and everybody gets that. But what I'd like to remind everybody about, regardless of, you know, what we're talking about with the historic preservation of Shedler, which I do believe is important, is really, why don't we tap into our humanity and our moral compass and do the right thing for the people who should not be marginalized in that neighborhood? You know, we're all human beings, we're all intelligent people, and we all have hearts and minds, and we can listen and we can hear and we can understand people. And again, we've talked about how expensive Shedler is and how much money and, you know, money making and all these topics. But, you know, while we address things, you know, that Niti has come to talk about week after week, like the sidewalks, which are so important for people. You know, a woman who has a disabled child who can't even leave her house because she can't walk down the street. You know, we're looking at the same concerns where the cars are speeding off of Route 17. We don't want to see a child get hit by a car because they're playing at Shedler Park. And it's called Shedler Park. So it's not a sports complex. I hope it doesn't turn into a sports complex. And, you know, we'd like to preserve the trees. And, you know, they do provide, you know, regardless of what other people's opinions are, I live there, I can tell you it does provide a natural barrier to Route 17 and reduces our noise. The trees that were cut down, I can tell you there's a substantial difference between the trees that were cut down when the berm was built to now. We could hear way more traffic. So once the rest of the property is leveled, please keep in mind that we live there. This is our neighborhood. We talked, you know, last week a little bit about, you know, respect for the people that live in that community, and we don't want to be marginalized. We have the same rights to clean water and clean air. You know, it's not cheap to live here. We pay a good amount of taxes. And I think that we should get the same respect and consideration that we talked about with the Green Amendment that was just passed recently. And, you know, we would appreciate some kind of a dialogue at some point to maybe address and do some due diligence around traffic, our health, and, you know, the safety of people who live there and would be using the park, because that's important. We do not want to see a child run out to get his ball and get hit by the car. That would be terrible. That would be a tragedy. And there would be a stigma attached to Shedler, and nobody would come back. We don't want that. We want a nice place for people to come and enjoy themselves, and that's really all I have to say tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. And we have a couple of people on hybrid access. First one is Susan. Susan, you're on mute.
Yes, hi. Here we go. Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I'm going to be talking about the footbridge because additional barricades were recently installed, or on Friday, installed after someone commented about the track team using the footbridge. Those barricades we were speaking to the workers, and they were instructed by the village manager, who has never visited the footbridge, nor has the village attorney. I will bring up the village attorney because he, back in October when the footbridge was discussed prior, I had mentioned the track team using the footbridge, and he was more concerned at the time about people using the footbridge than their safety with the dangerous alternative routes that people were taking. Weeks later, I see the girls' track team run on the side of the highway between ramps on Route 17. They weren't using the footbridge, but I wonder what worse could happen to them on Route 17. The worst that could happen on the footbridge was a sprained ankle. Okay, and I know from last week the cost keeps going up. And I'm not certain why the delay between two village councils to discuss the footbridge. Because the cost of repairing the footbridge was the same cost, was over the cost of replacing it back in 2021. And I have a question to the village attorney, which I would like him to answer at the meeting. And that is, since the additional blockades are put up to ensure residents are taking more dangerous routes, will the village be held liable if someone gets hurt or killed taking these routes, especially due to the failure of the village repairing the bridge or fixing the bridge? Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Mary Lou, you're up.
Mary Lou Handy, 695 Kingsbridge Lane. I'd like to talk about the footbridge. I hope that each of the council members will come by and see what I see from my driveway and from my front porch. It kind of looks like an inner city barricade. These huge barricades just ripe for kids to do some more graffiti, as they have done on the caution sign so people don't go into the river. We moved to this home. We've lived down the block a few streets and now here for many, many years. And one of the attractions to us for living right here is our ability to walk to Glenn School for my daughters and grandchildren to play soccer. That's been removed from us. Yes, we can take a car, but we like the convenience of walking over the bridge, up a block, and there we are at Glenn. My daughter has been staying after school to work out in the gym, and I am not always able to pick her up and bring her home. She's walked home. She cannot walk home now safely. In order for her to walk, she has to walk down Maple all the way to Hollywood Boulevard and then come down over 17 and now walk another mile back to Kingsbridge Lane. We moved here, we had a bridge. We want that bridge back. We need that bridge back. I don't understand why it just couldn't have been repaired. It's a more sensible way of spending less money to repair rather than replace, and it really was never proven to be unsafe and not repairable. The talks about, if you have to fix something to a certain percentage, I understand, perhaps may trigger other kind of handicap accessible or something like that. But I don't think that the repairs, from what we've been told by previous council presidents, that it only needs to be repaired. It is not structurally unsound. So please, let's take the sensible, quickest route. We've waited 2 years already. And this was here when we moved here. We haven't had a chance to continue to use it. So please come and take a look. I don't know what to do. Maybe there's a better barricade that can be built than this ugly, ugly, big piece of wood, and it just is not safe. I can just imagine kids trying to get around it. But thank you very much for listening. Please come and see what this looks like and see how far we have to travel just to get to town. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thanks, Mary Lou. Robin, you're up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, sorry I wasn't able to attend in person. I'm on mommy duty tonight. So Robin Fisher, 412 North Monroe. The agendas are switched, and I just want to hope that it's because you guys are going to consider the sidewalks. As Niti mentioned, we've got very little left to go, and I just wanted to thank you for reconsidering it, for reaching out and considering this project as a safety, really, for everybody. As Niti and some of the other members mentioned, it's not just kids, it's adults, it's the disabled, it's all of us, right? We all use it. It's our main street, and there's nothing in Ridgewood that compares to the speed and the stretch that Glen has. As much as there are other streets that could use sidewalks, and I'm all in support for walking, Glen has the highest speed, the highest accident rates. It is insane. So take a walk on Glen, see what we're talking about, and just help us. It's the right thing to do for everybody. Okay, I think I'm good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Robin. Joanne, you're up. You're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Perfect.
Joanne Loyka, Loyka, 685 Kingsbridge Lane. I echo everything that Mary Lou and Susan have said. It looks horrible at the end of the street, and it's unconscionable that this has been sitting for over 2 years without being able to access it. I've been a resident in Ridgewood for 44 years, 37 years here on Kingsbridge Lane, and I beg you to please come look at this, get this fixed, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joanne. And with that, I'm going to close public comment. Heather, I think you're familiar with our paving schedule. Mr. Dobson had a question about that I think is an easy one.
Yeah. First of all, Linwood Avenue is a county road, so that is being paved by the county sometime this year. The digging up of roads that were recently paved, we do actually have a fine for utilities that do that unless it's an emergency work, and they are fined for doing so. I think, does that answer most of it? And PSE&G also does send out usually what streets they're going to be working on. Recently, it's been every street because they're doing the Energy Strong program. But and we do tell them if we're planning on paving that they should get this done before that happens. So, but other than that, that's basically the answer I have for that. As far as the barricade, that's there because of the fact that we don't want people going on the bridge. People have been going on the bridge, and we can't allow that because at this point it has been compromised. So, the council will be discussing later this evening, how they wish to proceed, but at this time, the barricades should stay up.
Thanks, Heather.
Excuse me, I have a couple questions. Heather, I don't think one of the questions he asked was that who pays for it? If PSE&G rips it up, do they pay for the paving?
Well, they pay a fine for doing so.
Oh, just the fine?
Well, then they have to restore it as well.
Oh, so they do have to pay for the paving.
And we just increased the fine this year.
Right. No, I wanted to make sure that they paid for the paving. And then just one thing about Shedler that made me think, did we ever do a sound study or get a decibel level before any trees were taken down?
Yes, we did it before and then after.
Okay. And do you know what the results were?
I can dig that up. That was a while ago.
Okay.
But we can certainly send it out to you again.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say two things. So first, we take Open Public Meetings Act seriously. I did not follow Evan to have a conversation. I went to the ladies' room. Some of the meetings are very long. We had discussed having breaks, and we're not having them. I have a lower back problem. It's hard for me to sit for this period of time, but I did not have a conversation with Evan in the hallway. The second thing is, Ellie, that report seems fascinating. And do you only have it in hard copy? Can you give it to us and we could make a copy? And I know I would like it for parks, and I think Pam would like it for open space. Can we give it to the Board of Ed as well? Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Do you think we do, Heather?
I don't know offhand. I'll find out.
Okay.
And with that, we'll go to the manager's report.
Council chat is held on the first Saturday of the month. The next council chat is scheduled for Saturday, May 6th from 9 to 11 a.m. here in the courtroom. Please call for reservations 201-670-5500, extension 2207. Walk-ins are welcome. However, reservations have priority. As a reminder, all dogs 7 months or older must be licensed. Dog license renewals have been sent out via email, and the deadline for dog licensing is before June 30th to avoid the late fee. Please contact the Health Department for more information. The Ridgewood Health Department Stigma Free Committee and community partners are proud to present a mental health comedy show on Thursday, May 18th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. At the Ridgewood Library Auditorium. This is free. It's a hilarious and unique performance that will offer a comedic look at mental health. Registration is required. Please call 201-670-5500, extension 2312, or email dpagani, Pagani, at ridgewoodnj.net. This program is recommended for individuals 18 years and older. Refreshments will be provided. No Mow May is underway. Ridgewood residents who registered are not mowing their lawns in May in order to preserve the habitats of many insects and bees and to promote conversations about the environment. All participants have No Mow May signs on their lawns. Grade and Pool preseason badge distribution or in-person assistance will be available on May 13th and May 20th from 10 a.m. to noon at Grade and Pool. You may also register on Community Pass. For the 2023 Graydon season, a new badge is for babysitters for $195. This badge can be used by live-in nannies, au pairs, multiple daily babysitters over the age of 18, or grandparents caring for the child that day. Please note that those in possession of this special badge may not enter the facility unless they are accompanying the child's badge holder, and they are not permitted to bring guests during any visit to the pool. Online registration for tennis and pickleball badges is also available on Community Pass. Ridgewood Learn to Ride and Safe Skills course. Kids will learn how to ride a bike with a balanced first approach. Learn to Ride Session 1 for ages 5+, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. or 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And Safe Bike Skills course, 3rd to 11th grade, is 10:15 a.m. to 11:45 a.m. And this is all being held on May 13th at the Graydon Pool parking lot. The cost is $15 for Ridgewood residents and $30 for non-residents. You can register on Community Pass and just sign up for one session before May 5th. As a reminder, the 2-day per week irrigation regulation is in effect year-round. Odd-numbered addresses may water their lawns, shrubs, flowers, and trees on Tuesday and Saturday, and even-numbered addresses may do so on Wednesday and Sunday. No irrigation is allowed on Monday, Thursday, and Friday. Spring into health with us during Ridgewood's 2023 Wellness Series, promoting healthy eating, exercising, financial literacy, environmental sustainability, mental health, and reducing stigma and increasing social support. As part of the wellness events, the Parks and Recreation Department is offering Chill Out Gentle Yoga on Mondays in May from 1:30 to 2:15 p.m. and Fishing to Free the Mind on Saturday, May 29th, 2 sessions, either 9:30 to 11:30 or 12:30 to 2:30. Register at Community Pass. The last day to register to vote for the primary election is May 16th. You can register all day here in the village clerk's office or from 4:30 to 9 p.m. in the library lobby. As long as you register by 9 p.m. that day, you are eligible to vote in the primary election. The annual Touch a Truck event will take place on Thursday, May 18th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Memorial Park at Van Ness Square. Imagine having your child take a seat behind the wheel of a real police cruiser, climbing aboard a shiny fire truck, exploring up close a fleet of the other emergency and public works vehicles you've only seen at a distance. As an added bonus, there will be Safety Town Kiddie Car Driving Track, hosted by the Ridgewood Police Department and Little Ivy Learning Center. A special truck story time will be hosted by the Ridgewood Library. Project Pride Planting Day is Saturday, May 20th, beginning at 7:45 a.m. The committee is looking for volunteers. It's a 2 to 3 hour commitment. We request that you please come and help us out to make our central business district look beautiful If you have any questions, please email Councilmember Reynolds at lreynolds@ridgewoodnj.net to sign up, or if you have any questions. The Ridgewood Recreation Department, along with Totes Goats LLC, will be hosting Goat Yoga on Saturday, May 20th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the stable. Don't miss out on this totally fun experience for yogis, beginners, and goat lovers. Practice the art of yoga while taking pictures and interacting with goats who will climb on you and cuddle you. Tickets are $50 per person for ages 18 and older. Register on Community Pass. You can use Visa or MasterCard at 3% convenience fee is charged. Are you the smartest person in Ridgewood? Prove it. Ridgewood Emergency Services, along with Joe Trivia, is hosting Trivia Night to kick off EMS Week. The event is taking place on Sunday, May 21st, here in Village Hall at the Youth Center. Doors will open at 6:15 p.m. and the trivia begins at 7 p.m. Tickets are free, but you must register online and in order to attend this event. The event is funded by Forest. There will be some prizes for the people who get the most points. The Fred D'Elia 46th Annual Ridgewood Run will take place on Memorial Day, Monday, May 29th. The course starts at Veterans Field and is sponsored by the North Jersey Masters. All participants must be registered. Visit njmasters.com for further information. The pedestrian plaza, where streets are closed to vehicular traffic from Walnut Street to Broad Street along East Ridgewood Avenue, will be held on Saturdays and Sundays from June 3rd to October 9th. There will be music and entertainment in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square on Saturday night and Sunday. Each month will be culturally themed, and there will be special activities for children. Please come to shop, dine, and enjoy the entertainment this summer. The Cashwell Memorial Shell is celebrating their 65th anniversary this year. The performances are held on Tuesday and Thursday evenings from June through the beginning of August. To help fund the newest seasons of programming, they are running a community donation campaign with the goal of raising $25,000. Funds raised will be used to produce upcoming events as well as the scholarship fund. There are different levels to contribute. All contributing donors will be recognized on the Cashwell Memorial Shell website. Village Council upcoming meetings are broadcast live on the Village website and Channel 34 on FiOS. They are also available on Zoom or by phone or by YouTube. Upcoming meetings, May 10th is our public meeting, as is June 14th. May 24th, June 7th, and June 24th are all work sessions. All of our meetings begin at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you,
I'm
Heather.
sorry. Can I just, Heather, it's my fault. We actually changed Project Pride Day.
Sorry about
It
that.
was on the calendar from last year on Saturday the 20th, but because the townwide garage sale is that day and several of our members are participating and wouldn't be able to do the plant day, we moved it to Sunday, May 21st.
Okay.
Same time, same everything, just Sunday instead of Saturday.
Thank you for correcting that.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, Lorraine. Council reports. Siobhan?
Sure, thanks. So on April 28th, I participated in an integrated community project self-awareness for municipalities as the Access rep. And it was an outside organization that applies a scorecard to how Ridgewood is doing with respect to access. Inez could not attend with me, but it was Jesse Schwartzman, who some of you know attended with me as a Ridgewood resident. We took a whole bunch of questions, answered them. Some I didn't know the answer, which I called Heather after. And we have been provided something called a toolkit, which Heather's going to forward to everybody. One of the things that gave us a lot of points was the fact that we are running these meetings in hybrid fashion. And this is a big thing that people in New Jersey municipalities, it's very favored upon, because for the access community, online participation is door opening, where in person can be door closing. It was very, very interesting. It says nationally, 61 million adults, 1 out of 4 adults lives with a disability. So I sent that to Heather. She'll circulate it. If anybody ever wants to come to this, it was really interesting. It'd be particularly interesting for the planning board as well. On 4/28, a whole bunch of us went to the Y Gala, which was at Hackensack, and it was a lovely event honoring Valley Bank as well as Dr. Wheeler. It was lovely to see everybody. It's probably the first gala that I've been to since COVID has lifted, and a lot of money was raised, a lot of community gathering, and we were very grateful to be there, and I had the pleasure of sitting with his family, who was so super proud of him. On May 2nd at 7 a.m., we had the Fields Committee meeting. That, too, is offered both in person and online, and a wide range of discussions regarding field allocation, the master library rollout, and the issue of our scoreboards. Our scoreboards within both the Board of Ed and Ridgewood are old. They have these boxes, and some of the sports organizations are exploring a Bluetooth technology which would allow each person to use them, and that was a very interesting discussion. And we all did that morning have a sigh of relief that the river did not come over, and we were very relieved not to see any of our fields damaged. The same day, I had a meeting with our Pride Committee, and we've released our flyer on social for the village, both on Facebook and on Instagram. And the details are Saturday, June 10th. It's rain or shine, 1 to 2 at Van Ness Square. This is student-generated by our Saga group. We're working on entertainment, and it's going to be very fun and lively, and we're hoping everybody can come and join us. And that's it.
Thanks, Siobhan. Evan?
Great. I'll be somewhat brief. I too was at the YMCA Gala. Really fantastic event. It was wonderful to celebrate the YMCA with so many fellow Ridgewood residents. Also want to extend my congratulations to Dr. Wheeler. It was a wonderful presentation. I was really pleased and proud to be there. Also, just want to again to thank all the village staff who participated in the budget process. We were here last Thursday, and as I said then, given the headwinds, I think we got to the best place we could, and that was really due in large part to the hard work of village employees, especially Heather, Bob, and everyone else that participated in that. Finally, just want to tell everyone how happy I am and how much I'm looking forward to the pedestrian plaza opening up a month from today. Cannot wait to be there on that first weekend to stroll Ridgewood Avenue and see all my fellow friends and residents.
Thanks, Evan. Lorraine?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a few statements because I wasn't here last week for the budget vote. I wanted to thank Bob Rooney. I don't know if you're watching, but thank you, and his staff. I want to thank Heather and all the department heads, all the employees of the Village of Ridgewood. It was a really tough year, and everyone gave up a lot. You did the best you could with the orders that were given you. As you know, I was very verbal during the budget process about several items. I was always against our employees being furloughed, always against the replacing of our village manager, which will cost us $84,000 this year and $225,000 next year and each year thereafter, plus benefits. The police chief had asked us to hire 5 officers. We put 1 in for the budget. I was against that. I feel like we're putting our residents at risk by not having the officers that the police chief had asked for. Many of our departments are understaffed, and there will be no hiring for anybody. If we kept Heather as village manager, we could have hired 2 to 3 people this year. I was always against removing all of the money for the West Glen sidewalks, most of the tree money, most of the stormwater management money, and I was always against adding an additional $500,000 to Shedler when we already have about $1.9 million sitting there that we have bonded and we have been paying for. That money will not be spent this year. When you are sworn in as a council person, you take an oath to do your due diligence and to be financially responsible to all residents of Ridgewood, not just a portion. I believe this budget does not accomplish that. It puts many things above safety, which I believe should be our first priority. I wanted to go on the record that I would have voted no on the adoption of the budget and no on spending $39,000 on the creation of a new website. I think the money could have been spent better elsewhere. Unfortunately, my vote would not have changed anything, and I'm sorry to say that. I wish my fellow council members would feel somewhat as I do about safety, but I just wanted to put it on the record and I had no committee meetings since last week, so I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Pam?
To add to what Heather said about No Mo May, registration is now up to 255 homes. And I'm pretty excited about that. Also, the Deer and Tick Forum that we're holding at the library will be May 31st. That's for anybody who's interested in deer overpopulation and how that's affecting our community. Any questions you want to ask, we'll have a panel of experts. So that's May 31st at the library. I also wanted to congratulate the Ridgewood Guild on their film festival at Bowtie Cinemas. They had a huge crowd this year, very interesting films, and I got to meet one of the characters in one of the films who walked from Bangkok to Barcelona. The Orpheus Men's Club Choir gave a beautiful performance on Sunday at First Presbyterian Church to celebrate the retirement of their director, John Palatucci, who has been the director for over 30 years. And I had the privilege of reading the Village Council's proclamation in his honor. If you are interested in joining and being a singer with the Orpheus Club Men's Choir, just Google Orpheus Club Ridgewood and you can get an audition. We also had a meeting, Paul and I met with American Legion Post 53, and we saw a presentation of a proposed Gold Star Families monument, and it was very gratifying to see how happy they were with this proposal. And will be coming before the council, I believe, on the 24th of May?
May 24th.
Yeah, to make the presentation then. And so I look forward to that. And I wanted to thank Paul for bringing Tess Giuliani and Lynn Brady in on that. To have professionals looking at this really makes a difference. That's all I have.
Thanks, Pam. I have a couple of items. So the Community Center Advisory Board met, and they've been busy, so get your pencils out because a lot of great programs. May is Older Americans Month, which I'm sad to say that I'm celebrating. And on May 11th, there will be an Older American Month program during the Hilt meeting here at Village Hall. On May 13th, there will be a bike safety program with Ridgewood Police Department at the Easy Ride from 9 to 2 p.m. On May 20th, the the CYC, and I forgot what the first C stands for, but second and it's Youth Corps. I forgot what the first C was. Is having an event for Zumba and strength and toning event for seniors at 10:30 a.m. On the patio here at Village Hall. May 29th. The CCAB will be hosting a Ridgewood Run water table on Fairfield Avenue from 7:30 to 9 a.m. And on June 8th, there will be a country fair at 3:30 p.m. at the stable. June 9th, there will be a cookie contest and bake-off at 7 p.m. And I also want to comment that I was at the YMCA Gala, which was just fabulous. It's nice to be back in the swing of things. I congratulate former Mayor Ramon Hache, who is now the executive director and is bringing so much energy and drive to this organization. It's really a great marriage. This morning, I went to a stigma-free symposium at Biagio's where our health department had a table, and I was stunned and so gratified to see there must have been over 300 people at this thing at 8:30 in the morning, and there was a theme there. It's okay to not be okay, and I just thought that the work that these people are doing is absolutely fabulous. As Pam mentioned, in the courtroom yesterday, there was a presentation by Tess Giuliani and Lynn Brady, both members of our Historic Preservation Commission, who worked tirelessly for months to come up with a design for a for a Gold Star Families Monument that is proposed to go in Van Nest Square. I will tell you that when I saw it, it took my breath away. It was absolutely lovely, but more importantly, the members of American Legion Post 53 really, really loved it. One comment that I heard was that Tess and Lynn hit it out of the park. And that meant so much to all of us who we knew that people like Tess and Lynn could come up with a great design that was worthy of Gold Star families. And we were so gratified that the people who were behind this, American Legion Post 53, were so happy with it. And that's all I have. Heather?
Okay. Our first item is a presentation. It's on electric vehicles for village departments. I'll ask Rich Calby and Chris Rutherstauser to come up. Back late last year, I asked them to please look into this for us due to the fact that their divisions have the greatest number of vehicles. I also do want to acknowledge the work on this project of Sean Hamlin, Mike Junta, Jovan Mahenzik, and ChargePoint, who is a vendor. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Rutherstauser and Mr. Calby.
Thank you, Heather. Good evening, Mayor, council members. We're happy to be here tonight to...
Can I just have you speak into the microphone?
Oh, okay.
He's new.
New to this presentation. So what we're going to present to you tonight is a very broad brush and beginnings of what will be needed to, what I'm quoting is the reimagination of Ridgewood's fleet to make it electric. The reason why it's a beginning is because there are a lot of challenges that need to be overcome, and I want to preface the presentation saying, although those are mentioned throughout it, don't take them as a deterrent. We're just identifying them as obstacles that we need to overcome as part of the plan to become electric in the fleet. So as part of the presentation today, the overall goal that we sought after based on, Heather's request to Chris and I was to develop a plan for electrification of the village fleet. What we're going to look at tonight is the beginnings of that. We're going to look at a review of the federal, state, and local plans and regulations. We're going to review the village fleet inventory and 5-year plan to anticipated vehicles that have to be replaced. Some industry highlights, things that we've been experiencing because a lot of us have already been researching the possibility of purchasing electrical vehicles, and then outline a possible vehicle charging plan, which most importantly would need to be done and in place before we even consider buying any electric vehicles. And then just kind of sum that all up with some recommendations that we have about the next steps. And of course, any questions that you have along the way. So first, let's start with a review of the current federal, state, and local plans. At the federal level, President Biden set out that by 2030, 50% of vehicles need to have zero emissions. And that's a goal set out to the vehicle industry, that anything they produce by that year should at least 50% of them be zero emission or electric hybrid type of vehicles. New Jersey set out a lot of ambitions as well. As early as January 2020, New Jersey's electric master plan encouraged electric vehicle adoption with a goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. It recommends an early focus on light-duty passenger vehicles, and you're going to see a theme of that throughout our presentation. Fast forward about a year or so later, New Jersey legislation passed the bill S3223 to set zoning requirements for all new development, requiring the installation of charging equipment and requirements on the number of make-ready spaces to prepare for what would be needed for electrical vehicles and charging requirements for the public at those facilities. Now, more recently this year, Governor Murphy set out a new goal, that expanded on the earlier master plan, that all new cars sold in New Jersey by 2035 must have zero emissions. That's going to be coming to us very quick. So with that in mind, the New Jersey state government that maintains their fleet set out a plan of the 25% of their non-emergency vehicles, again focusing on those light-duty vehicles, should be EV by 2025 in order for them to get to 100% by 2035. Now here locally, the Village Master Plan, which was adopted in October of 2022, under the Green Building and Sustainability element, it requires that a timeline be created to phase in electrical vehicles into the fleet. The circulation element also has a requirement to support development of electric vehicle infrastructure and develop incentives to encourage use. I kind of look at this recommendation as the public-facing piece. You know, outside of electrifying the village fleet, you also need to consider what needs to be done locally in the village itself to promote and support public use of electrical vehicles. We're not going to talk much about that part tonight, but it is something that needs to be considered. So a little bit about our inventory. The Fleet Department at Chestnut Street has identified that our inventory consists of 345 vehicles today. Quite a lot for this village staff, but with all the services we provide necessary. 125 of those vehicles are light duty. These are things like passenger cars, SUVs, or crossovers, generally anything under 10,000 pounds. This number also includes some trailers and generators. There's 71 medium-duty vehicles. These are the vehicles that range between 10,000 and 14,000 pounds. These are pickups, work utility vehicles. Then there are 72 heavy-duty vehicles. These are things like the garbage trucks, roll-offs, tandems, and other service trucks that handle a lot of equipment and a lot of daily repairs and replacements. And these are generally over 14,000 pounds. We also have approximately 38 police department vehicles, including some traffic detail lease vehicles and trailers, 15 fire department vehicles, including the fire engine apparatuses, 3 ambulances, 2 OEM vehicles, including 1 trailer, and 19 emergency service vehicles that also include 5 trailers and some specialty vehicles. Now, out of that group of vehicles, the Fleet Department has recommended that 32 vehicles out of the total will possibly need replacing in the next 5 years. This is their recommendation. Naturally, every department is evaluating this every year, so it can vary on the basis of what their current needs are. Sometimes vehicles last longer. Sometimes vehicles have a shorter life, depending on what may happen to the vehicle. An accident is a good example. Out of those 32 vehicles, 14 of them are light-duty vehicles. You know, those would be the likely first candidates for EVs. That includes 1 emergency service vehicle and 3 fire department vehicles. 7 medium-duty vehicles, the pickups, work utility vehicles. 11 heavy-duty vehicles, such as a fire truck. There is one that's going to be needed in 5 years, within that 5-year period. Garbage trucks, roll-offs, tandems, etc. Police department is to be determined at this point, but naturally there will be vehicles that have to be replaced in that 5-year time frame as well. So what are some of the highlights and concerns that we've identified in this process? You know, as I mentioned, we have been looking, you all know Sean Hamlin especially has been looking at electric garbage and recycling trucks for years. Chris and his staff have been looking as well. We've been looking in the water department. We're currently in a market that's seeing a lot of competition for this. The market needs to catch up to the demand. There's a lot of supply chain issues that still exist, and that's causing a lot of cost increases in the market. We're seeing light-duty vehicles that could range from something like a Ford Escape to a Ford Mustang sedan, where the EV versions could cost upwards of $12,500 to $18,000 more. Moving up into the light or medium-duty pickup class, like a Ford F-150 Lightning, which is the electric version of the standard Ford F-150 that we have in our fleet today, those can cost upwards of $25,500 more than what we're paying for the standard version today. Heavy-duty garbage trucks, and another good example why Mr. Hamlin has kind of pulled back on these in the past 2 years, even though he's had a proposal to move forward with them, they can cost upwards of double the traditional cost, anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 or more for an electrical version of a garbage or recycling truck. A lot of the vendors are requiring upfront payment requirements to hold your place in a production line. And resiliency-wise, There's a concern that if we go electric and we electrify the entire fleet, we're then dependent on another utility to make sure our vehicles work. So we have to be very careful what vehicles we choose to electrify as we move forward. So again, kind of sticking on that light-duty theme, those are the vehicles that are used by staff that go on daily tasks. They're not the big repair vehicles. They're vehicles that rely for snow plowing, garbage, recycling, collection. So to do all this, we are going to need charging stations. This part of the presentation was prepared by Joanne. I want to thank him for getting the information together. Some of the slides are shared from one of the vendor, and we credit them at the end as well. But there are a variety of charging stations. You've probably seen many of these throughout, the community, the state. If you go to the mall, Garden State Plaza or Paramus Park, you could see the ones on the right there. These are public-facing, chargers where you scan your credit card and you charge your vehicle. There are 3 levels of charging. They range from level 1 to level 3. As you move your way across the chart, the type of vehicle, the size of the vehicle increases. So as you go from level 1 to 3, the ability to charge a larger vehicle increases, with level 3 being for the large heavy-duty vehicles. The price changes as you move across the chart, too. Level 1 is the cheapest. 3 is the most expensive because in the case of level 3, you're required to bring a new power source, for that type of charger. But speed also increases as you move across the chart. Level 1 is the slowest, takes the longest to charge a vehicle. Level 2 is in the middle, and level 3 is instantaneous, fast, quick charging. And that's why it has the very large power requirement. Charging logistics, when you're looking at building out these different levels of charging, you have to look, is the facility capable of supplying the power to the charger? If not, a new electric source has to be brought in, dropped into the property. Then it can involve additional utility poles, wiring, land for that extension. Companies like ChargePoint that provides charging also offer a mix of public and fleet charging. So you could have a charger that could be in the Village Hall parking lot that can be shared between the public and the village at the same time. Additionally, they have a model where ChargePoint offers at-home charging for employees. If you have an employee who takes a village vehicle home, they could have charging on site at the property. But that, of course, is going to have complications to it. How do you credit the employee for that investment? What if the employee separates employment with the village? But just some ideas. Level 1 and level 2 chargers are the most cost-effective. When installed, they could have 2 ports that can service 2 vehicles at once. The cost for those is really in the conduit run from an existing electric pole or utility box to extend the electric and get that charger up and running. As I mentioned, level 3 is the hardest and requires a new electric source. Other logistics, the level 3 chargers can also charge 2 trucks at a time. If you charge 2 trucks overnight, they'd have the mile range necessary to do their job. A level 1 and level 2 charger can be shared by multiple vehicles. Spaces, can be ordinanced, as I mentioned, for fleet night parking only. Charge the village vehicles at night, then open those spaces during the day for public use, with the charge or for free, depending on how you want to move forward with it. Depending on those smaller light vehicles, you could get more range. Those vehicles could go up to 200 miles. They won't even have to charge every day, making that charger even more available for public use. Charger companies also have software that can track this usage and maintain the timing required to maintain whether or not it's a public-facing vehicle or a village vehicle that's using the port and how you charge it. Maintenance will be involved with these in a fee, moving forward. And, of course, the installation costs for construction have to be considered. Next slide's a little bit difficult to see and visualize, especially for the audience, but so I'll give a brief overview of it. This was just a depiction to kind of blow up the areas that are possible locations for charging. We are considering the Public Works Garage on Chestnut Street. That's the top left. Middle top is the Glen Avenue facility where the cycling yard is, also shared with the fire department, water department, and the parks department. To the right is Shedler. There was talk in one of the presentations, some public-facing charging at the property there. Lower left is the Hudson Street Garage. And then bottom right is Village Hall and the Water Department. We're going to kind of drill down into each of those as we move along here. Starting with the Village Hall and Water Department property. As we all know, Village Hall is in a flood zone, so that's going to limit our options in terms of what type of charging is placed and how many and where they're located. But this location has the highest demand for Village Hall fleet vehicle parking and charging. Again, the south location of this property is good based on that for mixed use. We could require 2 additional utility poles brought in for that purpose and install charging for a mixed use between village fleet and public. The north location, which is the police lot, can be ordinance as just village staff only for charging, as close proximity to the street, so bringing that power would be much cheaper and easier to do. The new water department office already has conduit in place and can be easily moved forward with charging, such as a level 2 charger, but not level 3 at this time. The Hudson Street parking deck already has charging in place, but this charging is only level 1. Those spaces are time restricted as well. So in that 3-hour time restriction, a car can't get much charge put into it. It's actually like 2 to 3% charge. So we need to look into changing either that level of charger or allow for longer parking in those spaces. The 3rd floor of the deck is also pre-wired with conduit for future expansion. So I recommend starting a program here with someone like ChargePoint. This could be a good demonstration project where we merge in some new units with the existing units or change out the existing units and use this for both public-facing and possibly village fleet charging at the same time. It requires staff to pick up their vehicles at that spot, but they could park their personal vehicle there, jump into their village vehicle, and then go about to their duties of the day. At Chestnut Street, DPW, probably the 2nd largest area demand because this is the hub for Public Works Department and sanitation. There's the potential here for medium-duty and heavy-duty trucks, which require level 2 and level 3 charging. But the problem here is that the facility's current electric system is totally maxed out. We'd have to bring in new power for those purposes. If we had both level 2 and level 3 charging, we'd have to separate those types with transformers for those different types of power needs. The facility is due for some type of renovation in the future for the fuel pumps, and the existing lower garage is in the state of disrepair and should be taken down at some point. So there is an opportunity to do something at this facility that would help to expand for the purposes of public works sanitation and for the future of electric vehicles. Our Glen Avenue facility, Parks and Recreation, this property is greatly overused, as we all know. It contains a recycling yard, Parks Department, Fire Department, and Water Department. Existing electrical systems here, too, are already maxed out. In 2017, we did an expansion at the property, knowing that we were going to put a future foam condenser in and some compactors for cardboard. Those have used up that grid requirement, so we'd have to bring in new power to this site if you were to do electrical vehicle charging. And we would need the high level here because you're talking about recycling trucks. So it would have to be a level 3 charger. Lastly, the Village Hall, EV and charging needs. This would be a variety of light duty through heavy duty, predominantly light duty and medium duty for the uses of village staff and then water department staff. And this would be level 1, level 2 charging. If we did bring some of the heavy duty vehicles here, we would have to bring level 3 charging. But for the reasons identified earlier, we do have to deal with the floodplain issue. The water department lot is out of the floodplain, but only has room for 4 vehicle charging stations, and at this point, level 2 only. But if we were to build out the Village Hall lot into level 2 or level 3 scenario, we'd have to deal with that, floodplain problem. So knowing all this and, the complexities that we've identified, what we'd recommend as a next step is to really develop a solid plan that starts with vehicle charging, build out, funding for that, identifying grant programs to help pay for that, and then build out the plan for buying the vehicles that are anticipated to be replaced in the next 5 years that would be supported by that build-out. And then after that, look into what is needed to be done to develop a plan to serve the public in conjunction with this, but also outside of it in places like the business district or other areas within town that are frequented by the public. To do all that, what we're recommending is that the village consider appointing an individual to be the point person on electric vehicles, somebody that's familiar with fleet, somebody that knows what electric vehicles are, what the infrastructure is currently in the village, and what's needed to be built out. So they can identify these obstacles further, know what the inventory is, what needs to be replaced, and then guide each department head each year on what needs to be done and come up with an overall plan. What we're presenting to you tonight is just really the beginnings of what needs to be done. But someone needs to kind of take the whole thing over and really put the detail to it. So with that, we'll be happy to take any questions. You know, and as Heather mentioned, the acknowledgements are there for those that helped us put this together.
Rich, Chris, and Heather, I just want to say this has been a great comprehensive plan and assessment. Some of this started when I went to the League of Municipalities convention and sat in on a couple of classes on this, and Heather and I spoke about it, and this is exactly what they said the first step is a fleet analysis, an infrastructure analysis, and that's the good news. The bad news, I think, is that this raises as many questions as it answers, but let's open it up to the council, because I'm sure they all have questions.
I've heard that maintenance on EVs is less expensive, and would that counterbalance the initial cost increase?
I'll defer to Chris.
With fleet services, there is the flip side of that. We need to train our mechanics. Our mechanics are ICE trained. That's an acronym for internal combustion engines, both diesel and gas. Electric motors, as you say, generally may take less maintenance or service, but you still have to have a qualified, trained individual. So while there may be a savings in effort for servicing an EV vehicle, we do have to get staff up to speed.
I see. And in terms of there being a lack of supply in the light-duty vehicles, would you consider plug-in hybrids?
Well, let me take a step back, if I may. The village does have experience with electric vehicles. In 2004, the village purchased 2 Toyota Priuses. They unfortunately had a very short service life. The one that was assigned to me got wet. I opened it up in a flood. There was 3 inches on the floorboard and never started again. The other one had a head-on collision and was totaled. The next vehicles the village had were 2 Ford hybrid Escapes. They were used by the parking enforcement officers. It was kind of a misuse because the PEOs don't drive very much. They drive maybe 10, 15, 20 miles a day. And a hybrid is best if you're driving 50, 100 miles a day. So we never made back the savings on fuel in comparison to the upcharge for the hybrid system. The village also had an experience with 2 BMW all-electric Minis. We, Frank Moritz obtained them for the village. We were part of a pilot program to see how they would work for us. They were interesting. I had one. It was a hell of a car. You go on the highway, that thing had acceleration like you wouldn't believe. It was great for sneaking up on people, but it also had no room in it. I could drive it with maybe a little something on the seat next to me. There was no back seat. Very, very small. Well, we had people take them to Trenton to like a DEP meeting, and there was a significant concern whether the vehicle would make it to Trenton and back. Again, this is easily 10 years ago where there wasn't as much infrastructure charging or as much familiarity as there is now. The learning curve is getting better on them.
And none of those are plug-in hybrids that you mentioned. with a plug-in hybrid.
No, they weren't. Well, the minis were. You had to plug them in. They were straight electric.
Right, and I'm talking about a plug-in hybrid where you have both gas and electric. Therefore, you are taxing the charging system less. They have a range of mine. Now they're bigger. You can have an SUV, and you don't have to worry about range quite as much because you always have the backup of the gas.
Yes, that is a major advantage of it.
So, I would urge you to consider that.
Well, the hybrids, even a plug-in, there's nothing in the F-250, F-350 classification of pickup. Those, for example, the engineering division has 3 of those for our staff. The reason we have those, they're multi-purpose. They're the daily vehicle for the staff. As soon as it snows, we slap on a snowplow. None of the EV vehicles that we've been presented with, Rich or I, Rich can correct me if I'm mistaken, has the ability for snowplowing.
You're looking at 14 light-duty vehicles in the next 5 years that have to be replaced.
If they are pickups, we will be looking at F-250 gasoline. Because if it's a plow vehicle, we need to maintain a plow vehicle. Granted, this past winter we had hardly any snow. Yay! We're going to get hammered sooner or later, and then we're going to need to have those vehicles in our staff, in our fleet, to respond to the needs of the residents.
But what about the administrative vehicles and the detective vehicles? The administrative vehicles.
Oh, we do have several. Some of our older ones, I think, are the Ford Focuses. They date from, I think, 2008 or so. They generally have very low mileage, barely into 15, 20,000. Staff vehicles for like the building inspectors, the vehicle I drive to do my work, generally does not rack up very much mileage. Those are excellent vehicles when the replacement cycle comes up to go to an EV, because we're not putting a demand on those vehicles like we would if we need them for snow plowing.
Okay. In terms of where to put chargers, I know you're not looking at community charging yet, but what about in the Cottage Street lot where we don't have enough people parking, and that would be a draw?
It is a possibility. As Rich mentioned, the cost would be the infrastructure to run the wiring to a charger location. Rich did mention that the state had issued an edict on land use that site applications have to provide make-ready for EV chargers. We have required that of several site plans that have come before the planning board. We're also considering that with any of the parking that will be developed at the Shedler site. But that's only make-ready. The conduit's in the ground, the wire's not necessarily pulled. And the reason I mention that is the copper wire is usually one of the larger costs in getting an EV station operational.
Thank you.
Sure.
Evan?
I guess I get a question, comment. I mean, I agree with all this, and I think this is a wonderful thing for that this far ahead. My problem is paying for it, and I was wondering if during the course of your research and meetings, I like the idea of perhaps bringing in an outside consultant to do a fleet plan for us, but I'm really interested to hear about federal grants, state grants, other grants that maybe we can do to fund this, because this is not going to be cheap. And if we're going to be really serious about doing it, we got to think about how we're going to pay for it.
So the majority of grants that we've seen to date, and they are out there and they're available, require that the charger be publicly available. So we definitely have to look at this type of hybrid installation where it's a shared use. It can't just be strictly village use only. If you're getting the money from the federal grant program, you have to have it open for public use. But there are programs available they'll pay for the charger, and in public service, other electric companies have incentives that help pay for the power installation as well.
Have we looked at maybe what other towns in the area are doing? Are they using some of those grants? Because I'm just thinking in terms of making it available to the public, which is not a bad thing, just in terms of ensuring that's available for village vehicles. I guess, have other municipalities used those grants in that way? Are the municipalities getting grants from other areas? Are other municipalities that are ahead of us paying for this some other way than tax base?
I haven't looked into what other municipalities are doing at this point, but we could do that.
The village at one point was offered free chargers on our public streets. They had that same model charger at Van Soen Park where the zoo is. How the company makes its revenue is from the chargers are a flashing billboard, basically.
I'm sorry, what was that?
They're a flashing billboard.
Oh.
So they stand approximately 6 feet tall. They're about 30 inches wide. So you have two sides, and they sell the advertising on that. And in turn, someone can park there and charge. Usually it's like Rich said, a level 1 charger that doesn't provide a rapid charge. But Heather and I looked at that. We investigated several samples, and when we did do that, we looked at that and said, I don't think this is right for the village.
Vehicles anyway, because that would be in a public. That doesn't help with the village vehicles because that's not. That's in a public.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Said that doesn't help with the village vehicles either, right?
No, but it does address like being able to provide EV charging to the public.
Right.
Most of the multifamily housing projects that have been built in the last few years all have EV charging space, because in talking to the people that run them, there was a demand from their tenants.
I mean, I guess my suggestion would be that the next step here is to really figure out, are there consultants that we can potentially budget to hire that would include not only a plan, but also grant writing and some funding sources. And then secondly, also over the next maybe weeks and months, to explore what other similarly situated municipalities are doing to advance their own EV agenda. When it comes to good ideas in government, I'm not opposed to plagiarism. If somebody else has it, I'd love to copy what they're doing and see if we can do it here. Because as great an idea as these are, and we should be thinking in this way, if the money isn't there to do it, then it's not going to get done. But thank you guys for the work on this. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Evan. Lorraine?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody that was involved with this. It is very comprehensive. I think the level ones are, almost a waste of time unless it's going to be for a village employee, truck or a car that is going to be charged overnight.
I agree with you. You get it. The only benefit you get if it's an overnight park is you come home, say around 6 p.m., you plug it in, and 12 hours later when you want to leave at 6 a.m., you got the benefit of the charge.
Exactly. So I think level 2 and 3 are the way to go. As Evan said, it's going to be expensive. I like his ideas of finding out what other towns are doing, see if there are consultants, because I don't think any of us here are experts. We don't really know that much, but I can only imagine the cost on something like this. But it's the wave of the future. We have, it's the right way to go, and we have to figure out how to get there without killing our taxes. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lorraine. Siobhan?
Thank you very much. It was very interesting. I'm a little concerned about our infrastructure and some of the options. I didn't realize those buildings were in such condition, and I know that you'd have to modify the electric, which is probably the most expensive part. So I agree that, is there a reason why with Hudson Street, that seems highly inefficient, can we swap those out to begin with? Or is that normal level 1? Because that seems for 2 to 3% for 3 hours.
Well, when we built the garage, we requested EV chargers. We were maybe not astute enough to push for the higher levels, so we got level 1, the least expensive. If we wish to upgrade to the level 2 or 3, we'd have to take a very hard look as to whether the wiring could be reused, certainly not for level 3, and how much it would cost to rewire. The other thing is there is an emergency generator in the Hudson garage, but I believe its capacity is only for the elevator. It does not have the capacity, if I recall, to power a higher charger like a level 2 or level 3.
No, I think it's great. One of my main concerns with the fleet right now is that as electric emerges, our secondary market's going to get crushed when we go to relieve some of it if we don't start it. And I too think not just the purchasing of the actual vehicle, our infrastructure, it seems like a logistical issue to sort out. whether they can hand it electrically, and then, I just don't think we want to have employees going to satellite locations and swapping cars. So I think it's great, and I think it's going to move very quickly. I love the commitment to new purchases. I'm just a little concerned as to how we're going to charge them. But I learned a lot, so thank you.
Yeah, this is terrific. So many concerns. One of the things I know is that General Motors will stop making gas-powered vehicles in 2035. I'm going to imagine that most car companies will, if they're behind, they won't be far behind. That's only 12 years away. And I look at some of these other dates, I see they're listed as goals by the state and federal government. So I assume they're not requirements. Are they?
That can be difficult at times. The federal government has a way of attaching strings.
Got it. So with that being said, if 25% of our non-emergency vehicles need to be electric by 2025, which is about a year and a half away, and I know there's different ways of calculating this, but somewhere around 60 or 70 of our vehicles need to be electric in the next 20 months. Am I off base on this?
That's the state's goal for their fleet.
Right. Oh, for their fleet.
Yes.
Okay.
Not a requirement for a local government.
Okay. That being said, any way you look at this, we have a lot of work to do and not a lot of time. So what's our next step?
Next step I'd recommend, it's either hiring a consultant, but before that is appointing somebody on staff now to be the point person. One individual, one voice that does all this, spearheads, looking at every possible available space that's owned by the village. You mentioned Cottage Street, there's various other parking lots, and develop a build-out plan for charging, all the options, what are they going to cost, and then sit down with people like Chris and Mike Junta in the fleet division and look at every bit of the inventory and vehicles and identify what are the quick wins, how quickly could we get them, how much they're going to cost, and then come back and present that all to you in a phased-out plan. 2024, step one, how much is it going to cost, and forward.
So we've done the initial assessment. The next thing, I guess, is to develop a plan with our goals for the next 10, 12 years.
Yes.
And I'm going to guess from what you're saying that before we buy cars, we need to build out our infrastructure.
Yes, you need the charging infrastructure to support the vehicle.
So we're not looking at, our first steps are not buying cars, it's building out our infrastructure.
But there are some easy wins, like the water department, for example. Two of the vehicles on that 5-year list are water department Jeeps. When they get replaced, we could easily install charging at the water department because we have the conduit in place. But not every other site's going to be that easy. So there are some wins that we're going to have along the way.
I know that in the past year, the federal government passed an infrastructure bill that included $7.5 billion for charging stations. Do we know anything about that, and if we have any access to that money, or if it's even I'm going to hope that it's available now. Do we know anything about that?
Don't. I'll look into that as well.
No, and look, there's so much to look into here. So, and I have dozens of questions that really don't matter yet because they're putting the cart before the horse. So I'm going to ask senior staff if they can, after doing this great job, so we see where we are, to develop our next step and come back to us in the next month or two to tell us where we need to go, because the clock is ticking on us. And as Evan so astutely raised, being the banker that he is, we got to pay for this, we got to find the money, and there are so many things to do. I know your first thought is develop a plan for the next step and to appoint someone currently on staff to oversee this. So it sounds like a good way to go. Council, are we in agreement with that?
Yeah, I just had a question. Rich, is there anybody, currently on staff that is very knowledgeable in this field?
I mean, there's a couple people I'd recommend. One is a gentleman in, Chris's department, that has done a lot of this research already.
For a moment, I thought you were going to say the gentleman sitting next to you, but then you pulled back on
This gentleman and I have a lot of other things to do. But definitely we'd be involved in any process.
Sure. Yeah, if you can come back to us and let us know on our next step, I think that would be terrific. And I know the entire council appreciates. There was a tremendous amount of work done on this. It was very comprehensive, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just want to thank both of you. It was a great presentation. You really covered everything from, just educating us about EVs to, what our next steps are. So it's exactly what I asked, and so I really appreciate it. Okay. So, Rich, why don't you stay there, because we're going to go through Ridgewood Water. 9A1 we discussed last week. So we're now on, that's easy. So now we're on to 9A2. It directs the mayor and village clerk to sign an administrative consent order with NJDEP to outline the compliance schedule and requirements of the NJDEP whole system solution for treatment of PFAS. And this will allow us to work with DEP so that they, don't require us to finish our PFAS treatment in the short time frame that they originally stated, because they'll know that we have a plan and how we're going to get there, and as long as we meet the interim goals, everything will be fine. Is that correct?
Yes. This does nothing to change the plan or schedule. It's codifying that schedule to the state. And they've recognized this with many utilities throughout New Jersey, where they're giving everybody else an extension of time beyond the 1 year to complete the treatment that's necessary.
Questions? I have a question, Rich. Will we be required to continue to send out the notices that we've sent out thus far during this?
Yes, those will continue quarterly until the last plant is online.
And Rich, would you have, I know, told the council about the federal proposed guidelines? I think it's important that the public hears about this, where they are, where we will be relative to that, where many states will be relative to that going forward.
So the U.S. EPA is proposing new rules that are under public comment currently and could become effective by the end of the year, with a much lower standard for the compounds that we're currently regulated on the state of New Jersey, namely PFOA, PFOS, and they've also added 4 other compounds in the class of PFAS. The good news is, knowing that down the road there further regulation was going to come, the technology that we're constructing treats for these compounds. We're already testing for a lot of these compounds and have been for years. The bad part is many utilities throughout the nation that have not been paying attention to PFAS, and states that haven't even regulated it are now going to be under regulation from the U.S. EPA at this level and find themselves in a position where they need to comply very quickly. So we're once again very ahead of everyone else in that respect.
So, and again, just to be clear with everybody, so we had issues with the state DEP regulations that we were above the compliance level, correct?
Correct.
But many states don't have any state regulations.
Correct. Many states rely on U.S. EPA standards. They don't even have a Department of Environmental Protection.
And so once we complete our PFAS remediation program in about 3 years, where will our levels be?
We're filtering to non-detect.
Non-detect.
Correct.
Are there where will some utilities that are currently in compliance be if these regulations, these federal regulations are passed? New Jersey water companies.
They will be in violation.
So what we're saying is that while Ridgewood Water is currently not in compliance, that within 3 years we will be in compliance where many of the other New Jersey water companies will not be.
Correct.
Thanks. Yeah, we've seen, you've taken so much heat on this, and I just want to say that this PFAS remediation program was something that you spearheaded long before anyone else was doing this. And I know that you've taken a phone call or two that weren't by happy customers, and I understand where they are. But because of your foresight, we're going to be in a very good place in a very short time.
We're very close.
And I want to thank you so much on behalf of the council.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is about hiring a public communications consultant for 2023. Raf Tellis has been providing communication services to Ridgewood Water for public messaging on PFAS. They have provided support for public outreach programs on PFAS and water conservation. The goal is to provide messaging platform and materials that assist consumers in understanding PFAS treatment plan, operational strategy, conservation goals, regulatory compliance, rates, public dedication, and governance. So the recommendation is to award a contract for 2023 to Raf Tellis of Charlotte, North Carolina, in an amount not to exceed $36,245. And the money is in the water utility operating budget.
Questions, anyone?
Well, they've done an excellent job so far. So I would be in favor of this.
I would too. I mean, this is the group that we met with in the fall. They're wonderful. They were very professional. I think it's money well spent.
The next item is awarding a professional services contract for corrosion control inhibitor evaluation. So Ridgewood Water uses a sole source proprietary blend for system corrosion control. We are now, Ridgewood Water would like to evaluate the suitability of other products on the market to serve as a substitute for this sole source vendor. The process to determine this involves bench testing to evaluate the impact of each alternative on corrosion. The New Jersey Institute of Technology, NJIT, has offered to perform this work at cost plus 10% for overhead. The project will be managed by Dr. William Pennock of NJIT, and the agreement will be for a 6-week period with potential for extension. So again, the recommendation is to award this contract to NJIT of Newark, New Jersey, not to exceed $17,500, and the money is from the water utility operating budget.
Questions, anyone?
Okay. The next one is awarding a professional services contract for a Green Acres consultant. This is for assistance with Green Acres for potential diversions at 5 of the facilities that we have to improve for PFAS treatment. And currently they exist as Green Acres properties. Topology has been a big help to the village in our quest to satisfy our diversion. They also did work with Ridgewood Water for the Linwood Well on a very small diversion. So the recommendation is to award a professional services contract to Topology New Jersey LLC of Newark, New Jersey, in an amount not to exceed $15,000. And funding is contained in the Ridgewood Water capital budget.
Questions?
Okay.
I do. So this is the same firm that helped with the Broad Street diversion in the land?
Yes.
Okay, and this is just preventative in case there is a diversion?
There is land. I'll have Rich explain it.
Yeah, there are.
Outside of the Broad Street one in the past study, is Ridgewood Water going to create a diversion as well?
So these are historic water wells and treatment plants that are within parkland, but for some reason or other they weren't exempted when the Rossi was created. So the process with topology is to engage Green Acres very early on and look at what's needed to possibly do a Rossi amendment instead of a diversion. And there's also some work statewide to amend the rules that would allow such structures as wells and treatment facilities to be exempt. So we felt we need to get them on board now to start the conversation with Green Acres.
Okay, that's great.
Anyone else?
Heather, you saw that the resolution that's right behind this, it doesn't match it.
We'll make sure we get the right one.
Yeah. And what's up with the legislation? Wasn't there legislation to loosen these restrictions?
There was legislation proposed to allow the Commissioner of New Jersey DEP to exempt utilities for the purposes of constructing PFAS treatment, based on the need for public health. That was proposed and approved by the entire Assembly. It moved forward to the State Senate, where it was delayed to allow the Department of Environmental Protection to comment. They're making some minor changes, from what I understand, to legislation, and it's up for vote again, I believe this month or next month.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that that'll move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is PSE&G Energy Saver Program. There's a change order. The village contracted with PSE&G for an Energy Saver Program. A change order is needed, which reduces the lighting cost slightly based on the work completed and increases the additional work involved with making the HVAC system compatible with the current village control system. The cost for change order number 2 is $44,084.30, with the village paying approximately 25% of that cost and PSE&G paying 75%. The monthly cost for 5 years at 0% interest is $734.74. The funding will be through PSE&G energy bills through various departments.
It's nice that it's a zero interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to understand this. I mean, I'm not looking to gift horse in the mouth, but they're giving us 75% of the money to reduce costs so we pay them less.
Correct.
Yes.
Why do they do that?
I believe they've gotten incentives from the federal government to reduce energy usage, so they have to spend this money. And the best way to apply it is government buildings that use a lot of
federal
power.
money. It's not.
There could be some state money in there too. I don't know the exact details, but that's the
point
purpose.
is, it's not PSE&G money; it's money that they receive. Because I was just, I mean, again, it's a wonderful thing.
It's a great
couldn't figure
program.
Oh, it's terrific. Great.
This change order refers to the Cinnaminson Board of Education. That's who the contracting party is. So I guess they do a lot of these. But you might want to change that.
I'll get that fixed.
We will.
Thank you.
She doesn't miss anything, just telling you.
The next item is renewal and upgrade of the spatial data logic software. This is awarding a contract under state contract for renewal of this software, which includes an upgrade for 25 additional licensed users throughout the village. And the contract will be awarded to SHI of Somerset, New Jersey, not to exceed $50,200. Funding is through the IT operating budget, and also the health department grant will pay for some of this, as the health department uses the software probably on a daily basis.
And I have a question about this. In the resolution, after the word grant, before 13,000, there's a question mark.
No,
That's
it
a
was
typo?
probably, yeah, that'll
Good.
be out.
So we put a question mark there because we weren't sure what account we were charging to, so we just found out we have to charge it to the IT account and then submit it to the grant and then get refunded on it. So that's why we put a question mark.
Just curious. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is the replacement of the garbage cans in the Central Business District. So Nancy Biggos, Director of Parks and Recreation, Matt Andrulo, Supervisor of the Parks Department, Sean Hamlin, Supervisor of Sanitation and Recycling, and Rich Charlton, the Supervisor of the Signal Department, met to discuss new garbage cans for the Central Business District. We met as a bigger group originally, and then they broke off into this subcommittee. They received 4 quotes, and through the discussion, they decided that the garbage cans that would meet the priorities of the health and safety for employees and residents, It had a steel ring opening with an open hole, so it's no touch, durability, reduction of rainwater in the garbage can itself, and the distinction of a recycling can as opposed to a garbage can by putting a blue ring on the top of the can. And so the best quote was from BP Barco Products of Batavia, Illinois, not to exceed $59,123.22, and the funding is through the capital budget. And you have pictures here. Mm-hmm.
It said the suggestion is that you get the black, and I just see that in other pictures, like the one with all the squares, you know, there's a dark green that I've seen in some parks in other towns, and maybe you want to consider that as well. The hunter green.
This is for the streets, though.
So Pam, when we went,
It's not for the parks, it's for the streets.
I understand. And the other suggestion from Green Ridgewood was that on that blue lid, if we could put pictures of the types of things that are recyclable, or a line through it of the things that can't be recycled, that would help keep it clean and keep contaminants out.
We can check with the company if they can provide that.
Yeah, but I think this is great. I like the idea of the rain lid so that it doesn't take on water and make it very heavy to lift for our staff. And hopefully it'll be a deterrent to animals, vermin. And I'm amazed you came in at what we budgeted for.
I just have a question. Is this the one that there's like a sample one in front of, by Jersey Mike's?
no, we talked, so just by way of background, Pam and I attended a meeting with the police, Signal, DPW, Parks, and we had brought images of everything that exists there. At that point, that one, Rich presented that as an option, the one that you had seen with the dome on it, and the dome was ruled out because sanitation didn't like it. They felt that they couldn't move it as much, and we moved to the open method. There's a lot that goes into this from all the departments. We had to get clearance from the police. We did pick black to match the benches. We felt that it picked the hardscaping, and we had received, in addition to all the complaints, but we also want to have a presence of recycling on Main Street, which is why we went with the standard stock model, and then the caps will be replaced. So it'll be black, but then on the top, when you go to put it in, it'll have the blue recycled one. But that one's slightly different because a whole host of feedback was given on that dome, that they're often bent, that they're broken, that the prime example during the discussion was the pizza box. The pizza box doesn't fit, but people are going to make it, and then they in turn damage it. And without that top, the rain can go through too much, which is why the lid was increased.
Right. So tell me, so what's the final product? Is that the final product, what it's going to look like?
This one. You can see, and you can see even the blue insert.
How far back are we on?
All right, you're on page 1, 2, right after all the quotes. You can see. You can see, actually, you have several, but you can see the combination one there.
So doesn't the rain just go right in there?
No, Sean felt that it was good, and they had discussed drilling. I don't know where they left it, Heather, because they drilling holes in the bottom too, as well for some of the drainage, because the parks have it. So we had a more global meeting, and then they splintered out and made their final decision. And I think that they discussed at the bottom putting drill holes in the bottom of it.
Are these going to? Is there a canister inside these?
Yes.
That they'll take and dump. So will there be plastic bags or no plastic bags?
Well, there were generic plastic bags as opposed to the specific ones. So one of the things about the existing ones, those bags that came with us were an incredible ongoing cost. So these are more generic bags that we can buy off the shelf.
But they're still bags, so if they drill holes in the bottom of the can,
it's to catch the runoff for the ones that didn't go in. But Sean was there, and he felt very comfortable with it.
But the water is still going to go in the bag.
They felt that the sludge would be minimized. I mean, that was a definite discussion. And then afterwards, the decision wasn't made with Pam and I there. The police were there. Rich, Sean, Nancy. Nancy had a prime example. The Graydon Pool garbage cans are like 20 years old, and they made a lot of their decisions based upon that because of the longevity of them.
What do they look like?
This.
Okay.
I can show you what a rain guard looks like, but this is from a different bidder. But if you look at this last picture,
Right. So that's very similar to what they have at Jersey Mike's, that I know that Sean did not like.
He definitely did not like that top.
But I can't imagine that this one with no dome is going to be.
It does say that there's a rain bonnet lid, so it
Yeah.
must be a different type of lid that they approved. Because like I said, they broke off into that group of 4, and they're the ones who deal with those garbage cans every day. So,
it would be nice if Barco could give us a picture of what the rain bonnet looks like.
okay,
So this
I
is
can
not
get
the
that.
final product, are you saying?
Well, you're looking at a different bidder's picture, so,
Okay.
you know, just to be,
So we don't have
Sure.
a picture from Barco.
yeah,
A picture of Barco, we don't have a picture of the rain bonnet lid.
right.
I mean, I'll still say it's too much money. I would love to use I don't even know what you call them. They're not garbage cans, but the ones we used to have on the street that are made of cement, that are in perfect condition, that are sitting behind the signal department. If you can't see through these, you can't see through those. I don't see the advantage in spending $60,000 to get metal garbage cans when we have perfectly good, and I think more attractive. They have a cover. There's no rain getting in them.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, the concern with those concrete cans was for terrorist activity, that if someone put an explosive device in there, that would create a lot of debris and was very dangerous, which is why we switched to the clear plastic ones, which,
I understand
turned
all
out to be
that.
so not durable and are
Right.
just,
But
they
even
look
these,
terrible.
if somebody puts in an explosive device, it's going to cause a lot of damage.
I think, and I am certainly not an expert on this, I think the idea is that the metal does not create the same amount of explosive debris as the concrete. Any of you guys care to comment on this?
Jackie did bring it up in the meeting. The construction, the stone ones, Lorraine, are out for 2 reasons. Not just because of the bomb blast, which is the phrase that the police used, but they're also out because when moving them, which we have to do for parades, people were getting injured. The sheer weight of them made it an issue for our staff. So those were the two elements highlighted. So I know that we have them, but when the police say we can't use them, we have to adhere to that advice. And when moving them, they have occasionally cracked. I did just want to say that I do feel that the conversation regarding these receptacles has been slightly unfair to the reality. The current receptacles have exceeded their lifespan. There is no denying they are declining, they are failing, they are a terrible, I don't even know what the opposite of beautification is for our main street. They're dangerous, they present their own safety hazards, and Heather and I have talked about even removing some of them in the short term. Downtown and one area of our community has received the largest population growth of the past 5 years out of any area, and we've committed very little to the infrastructure there. Not only have we welcomed more people, but as a dog walker and a person who lives in town, we've welcomed an enormous amount of dogs, which is generating a ton of trash. We've placed our garbage cans at welcoming spots like the bus station, and quite honestly, they're embarrassing. They don't say welcome. They're not beautiful. They're not historic. They're not charming, and they're not safe. We have multiple historic buildings in our town, and we have multiple vacancies. If you walked out and saw some of the garbage cans that I forwarded to the full council today in front of a rental, you would question the commitment that this council is making to our downtown district. I also want to add that the more that the downtown community thrives, the more our tax dollars are softened. And increasing the population, trying to say come here, and having in a product that is unsightly, unwelcoming, and unsafe is not going to help. We, in addition to that, one of the questions I asked, and everybody sort of laughed, is how quickly, when we approve this, can we get it? The pedestrian plaza starts a month from now. We don't want broken things. We don't want, all the effort with Project Pride. We want downtown to be beautiful. We want to incentivize people to come, shop, dine, and eat, and we want to inspire businesses to come as well. And there's no doubt, and like I said, I will be the garbage can advocate. This has gone on for too long. They're declining, they're unsafe, and the team that was put in this room, which I'm very grateful to the team and to Heather, they're the ones that lift it, move it, and we can't go around saying we prefer something that the police have outright said is dangerous and that Sean said his department can't lift. So I know it sounds sort of silly because it's a garbage can, but again, this is infrastructure that needs to occur for the vibrancy of our downtown and the safety as well. And that's how I feel.
I'm sorry.
I just have a question.
A quick question. Do we know when we might anticipate getting these?
Well, we can't award the contract till next week, and I think it was a fairly quick turnaround, was my
I thought
understanding.
it was 6 weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
So by 4th of July, basically.
Hopefully.
Okay, fine.
So, Siobhan, I just have a question because I don't even know the answer to this. Do they always remove the garbage cans during like 4th of July parade, things like that? No matter what type, they remove all.
Not all of them, because I think some of them around the parks are bolted, but they do remove them, and they are concerned. Again, the police have a legit safety concern. The 2 bombing incidents that were highlighted was Asbury Park and I believe the Boston Marathon bombing. So when we assemble and invite like an increase in population density, they have to be moved. And those, I agree with you, the stone ones are beautiful and they're lovely, but they're unsafe for our staff to be transporting.
I don't know. I just worry that I know the 4 people that are involved have recommended it, but this doesn't seem like the solution to me. And I mean, and you say we have to listen to the police department. They say it's not safe, but we're not listening to the police department anyway, because they say we're not going to be safe because we need more police officers, and we won't let them hire more police officers, so we're contradicting ourselves. To me, I'd rather have a police, I know it's not the same thing, but I'd rather have a police officer than new garbage cans.
I love our police. I'm here to support them. Garbage cans do not receive a pension, and we all know that the cost of a police officer is not just the hiring of the staff, which is a rightful hire, but the longevity of this. We can't really do that, and we can't, again, our capital is our capital. I feel this is a good investment. And we have to be mindful when we swap capital for staff and entitlements that go with it. I think the budget, no one's happy with it. I mean, let's be honest, the discussion last week, no one's happy with it. But that doesn't mean we don't invest in our community. And the reality is these are unsafe and they've got to be pulled up rather quickly.
I think we are conflating a couple of topics here. This is just basic good blocking and tackling of government, right? You need to repair the garbage cans. I mean, it's really not open for discussion. I don't think anybody thinks that we shouldn't fix the garbage cans, especially downtown, which is one of the things that makes Ridgewood so special. If our staff is telling us that this is the best model, if it's the low bid, this to me is not a hard decision in some ways. I support it. I never thought we'd have this much discussion over garbage cans, but it is a lot of money. But then again, we're a big town with a lot of people, and when we invite people downtown and we want businesses to flourish, we have to do basic infrastructure, and garbage is definitely part of them. It's clear what we have now is not working. It sounds like the concrete ones are just not a viable option. If we could use those, I would, but I agree from a safety perspective. You've got to move them every time you have people there, and Boston Marathon was exactly what I was thinking. Every time I've been to a large parade, they always either have to seal like the post office boxes and do everything else because it's a great hiding spot, so I get the logic here. So this makes sense to me, and I appreciate everyone who went out to do hard work of getting the low bid and opining in from a professional perspective as to what the best option for us was.
I'm sure the current garbage cans that we have now were recommended to the council as well. So, and we see how that turned out.
I agree with Evan's assessment of this. This is the block and tackle of what government does. It's like filling potholes, and I want to especially thank Siobhan for shepherding this incredibly unsexy issue through and working with our staff to get it done. So thanks, everybody.
All right. The next item is the infrared asphalt surface repair. The village received bids on April 26th. There were 3 registered plan holders, and we received 3 bids. The bid also included repair and restoration of sidewalk slabs, driveway aprons, patching of trenches with stabilized base asphalt mix, and concrete curbs. The recommendation is to the lowest responsible bidder, J. Fletcher Kramer and Son, Inc. of Hackensack, New Jersey, not to exceed $250,000. Funding is through the Ridgewood Water Company operating account, because this is shared with Ridgewood Water, and then also possibly with other interested communities. The intent of this contract is to have available a means to restore village streets to a new condition after an excavation has been made in them.
Questions, anyone?
Who are the other interested communities? Is it just the other towns in Ridgewood Water?
We have discussed this, I believe, with Midland Park. We can ask them again if they're interested. I wrote language in the bid to give us the ability to share it with a community if the opportunity presents itself.
Okay. Thank you.
The next item is the Cooperative Purchasing Program acquisition for Fleet Services Division, parts, materials, and supplies. And this is to keep the village's equipment and vehicles operational. This is the award of contract under state contract for various materials and supplies to various lowest responsible bidders for that particular item. It's not to exceed $165,000, and the funding is in the Fleet Services Division operating budget.
Questions?
The next item is police vehicle leasing. I'll have Sergeant Jake Chuck come up. Last week, we spoke about awarding a contract under a Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Contract for leasing and maintenance of 6 Administrative Detective Bureau and Traffic Van vehicles for the Police Department to Enterprise Fleet Management of Wayne, New Jersey. Deputy Mayor Perrin asked about leasing EVs, and Sergeant Chuck is here this evening to discuss this further and answer any questions you may have. So, Sergeant Chuck, I know after the meeting you mentioned that there were some challenges with EVs, and so maybe you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so obviously I was asked to look into the electric vehicle for the patrol fleet, you know, the marked cars that we see every day, and there's definitely some concerns about how not cost-effective they are. In fact, it's overwhelmingly expensive. Just by starting off, if we look how much gas we're using a day, each car is using about, on average, about 4 gallons, which is costing the town just under $9, under $10 a day, and about $3,400 a year. With the electric cars, I did some research into the battery types that we would need for a patrol car. I spoke to some other towns that are using them. It was very disappointing of how inefficient they are. My estimate was that we would have to charge the car every 12-hour shift, and I was 100% wrong. The towns I talked to said they're charging them every 6 to 8 hours. Even if you use the fast charging stations, which Chris and Rich just went over, that charging station alone is $4,000 just for the station that's not installed. So charging on the fast charging station, we'd have to charge that car every, let's just for argument's sake, say 8 hours, we'll meet you in the middle. That charge costs us $14.76 at today's current electric rate, which is approximately $30 a day or $10,000, almost $11,000 a year to charge that car. So the first year, if we got an electric car, it cost us $15,000 to power it. One of the other concerns with electric cars is the battery life. The battery life expectation is normally 5 to 10 years. Obviously, we cut everything in half, which means we'd have to replace the battery during the police car cycle. Replacing a car battery is currently about $9,000. The only electric car that any company is endorsing as a police car right now is the Mach-E, which is the new Mustang. The only version that has enough power to work the lights and the radios and all that other thing is the GT version. That currently is $74,000 to $84,000. So the car is basically going to cost you $100,000. Just to put that into perspective, because we use larger SUVs. We either use the Explorers. We got stuck with a couple Dodges this year that we're trying out, and we have a couple Tahoes. The Tahoes are costing us about $51,000, and the Explorers are about $46,000 to $48,000, depending on the model. So obviously, we can see it's costing us about twice to go electric. Some of the other concerns that we have is we would not be able to put prisoner cages in these cars. The cars are not big enough, one. And two, the electric cars have so many technologies in them, and they're not really being built for police world. So the perfect example is the Mach-E has backseat airbags. They're built into the seats and not able to be removed. So imagine compartmentalizing that car in half and then shooting someone with an airbag if we got in a car accident. So unfortunately, this time I would say electric vehicles are not for our fleet. However, the question came up about hybrids and the cars that we lease for the detectives and supervisors and the administrative staff. There is a police car that is made by Ford that is hybrid. It's a traditional hybrid. Pam brought up the plug-in hybrids. The plug-in hybrids, for the lack of a better term, are still electric cars with little baby engines that when the electric dies, the engine takes over. Whereas your traditional hybrids are more gas when you need power and more electric when you don't need the power. Ford Police Interceptors are making a hybrid version where they've designed it where when the car's idling, you're getting a lot of the battery use and less of the gas. A couple towns around us are using a couple of them, and they do notice an increase in gas savings. About a quarter of what their gas usage is compared to the non-hybrid cars. So that's a viable option that we certainly could try. Unfortunately, this year we've already committed to cars, and they're in the building process right now. However, if that's something you guys want to try this year, we can certainly try to find some money and get that car and put it into the service as fast as possible. That'd be great. I have some spare parts downstairs. I could put some lights on it right away. Unfortunately, buying the car is a little harder. I'm sure I could find one. We just need to come up with about $47,000 for it. One of the other ones is a non-traditional, right? So something that's not a police car. Let's say you want to get that for the detective's vehicle. So far, some police departments have gotten away with Toyota Highlander, stuff like that. And they've had no real complaints against them besides the normal police car problems. But unfortunately, those things are still a little more expensive. The leases are super high on them right now. So we did look into Enterprise and asked them to price those out. And just because of the popularity of them, the leases are astronomical. And by the way, they're currently charging 9% if we would go into a new lease. We bought all our cars last year, and we were at 3%. So we're doing a lot better on those lease costs right now. I think there was a little bit of confusion, though. We are currently in a lease agreement with the cars that we have now. So all the new administrative staff, we did a turnover last calendar year. You guys know that used car values were great last year. When we resold the cars that we had, we got about $68,000 in revenue that came back to the town for that. And just to keep that math simple, just so I can pat myself on the back, on a 36-month lease for all the 5 cars that we had, we balanced out. We paid for those cars for about 22 months on the 36 months. So we really did good. The first year was not that good. The first time we did this, the return was not that good. So I'll never mention that one again, but this one did really good. So I hope that gives you guys a little more understanding of where we are in the lease program and our concerns about going electric with our cars. Do I believe that electric cars for the village are certainly things that would work, absolutely. For like example, the parking enforcement cars would be a great opportunity. Unfortunately, their cars are a little newer. There's definitely other departments that need newer cars and deserve those cars first. But I think it is a great program. It's a lot of infrastructure that Chris would be working on.
Thanks, Jay. Questions?
If you could just keep your eyes peeled for that Ford hybrid for the administrative vehicles.
So right now we're pretty good with the administrative vehicles. If we would get that Ford hybrid, I would love to put it in the patrol fleet and really test it out and see how it performs under the stresses of the patrol fleet. I could certainly find one. Again, the problem is, as we all know 1,000 times, is the money right now.
Well, thank you for doing this analysis.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we all appreciate it, Jay. It gives us a better understanding of where we are, and especially on the backdrop of the presentation we heard about EVs. It sounds like without the infrastructure, we really can't be buying EVs just yet, even though we all want to. I did have one question about the electric car costs, the electricity versus gasoline. And believe me, I am absolutely no professional on this. I was always given to understand that over the life of a vehicle, that the cost savings for electricity for an electric vehicle balances out even the increased cost of the vehicle, much less it never cost more than the gasoline. Am I off base on this?
So I thought the same thing until you start figuring out you were charging your own car. So what happens right now, a lot of people go to charging stations. That doesn't cost you anything because someone else is paying for it, right? The Village of Ridgewood's paying for it. You're going to Tesla. Tesla's paying for it. So let's say you want to take a road trip. You want to go from here to Florida. Tesla plans out your trip, stopping you at Tesla charging stations.
And those are free?
Those are free.
Really?
Right, because they're all government subsidized, right? When you're charging at your house, you're using that very low efficiency level 1 charger, so you're only paying a couple dollars overnight, and you're getting half a charge, enough to get you to work or to the garage, and then you're plugging your car in the garage for the rest of the day. To get that efficient charging is very expensive, right? And think about it, if we're charging our cars every 8 hours, that's about 30 to 45 days a year that car is sitting there charging. So to get that quick charge, you're paying a lot because you're using a lot of electric.
We have all learned quite a bit about this tonight, and we really appreciate your assessment of this. Thanks so much.
If you could just stay there for a minute. We're going to jump to the West Glen Avenue sidewalks, just because I know we have some safety concerns there, and maybe you could speak to that. I know we're waiting for accident reports in that area. We don't have that yet. We will have that. But, possibly you could just speak to that if after Chris makes his presentation. So,
and actually, before we get into this, can we just take a short break? 4 minutes.
All right, I'm going to time it.
Okay. have been funny. That would have been funny. Here, next time we'll do that.
Okay, we're back. So we're going to discuss the West Glen Avenue sidewalks. I know that Mr. Rotishauser handed out larger plans so you can see it better. So I'll have him present it. And then we'll have Sergeant Chuck talk about safety in that area.
Heather, do you have the PDF on this to project on the screens? Or
Dylan, are you there? Do we have the ability to put it on the screens? Okay. He doesn't have the PDF.
Do you want my copy, Nitty, so you can see them?
no, we're going to send it to him electronically. That's what I'm doing. It's on its way, Dylan.
So why don't we just start in general? We know that at the top of the hill, the first 3 houses, I believe, do have sidewalks on that side. Is it 3 or is it 4?
We indicate on the plans that the first 3 houses going eastward from North Monroe on eastbound West Glen, we've already constructed sidewalks.
Right. So they already have the
Can you give us
sidewalks.
those house numbers so we can?
The house numbers are on the drawings. So the
I know.
first,
So where
first
are we?
house we would starting work on would be, I think, number 232, then 228, 224, and so forth.
Oh, so you're not showing the houses that already have the sidewalks?
The only difference, the houses that have sidewalks, we shaded gray. That includes the area that's, it's physically extremely difficult to build the sidewalks.
Lorraine.
And the light, the unshaded area is basically the subject of this project, with the exception of the little corner piece that goes down to S Hill.
So basically, everything in white is what we have to add, right?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And that's 1,300 linear feet, you said last week?
I haven't checked it recently. I'll stick with that.
Oh, I could see that.
Okay, so Dylan's projecting, so however you want to proceed, Chris, I just wanted to
Thanks,
get
Dylan.
that.
And
Thank you,
Chris,
Dylan.
Chris, let me just ask you, and I'm sorry if I break up your flow, because I drive by the street all the time. Like the utility poles and the fire hydrants, like how do we move those? Because some of them are right up on the street.
Fire hydrants, we could talk to the Ridgewood Water Company. They can be moved. They'll charge us.
Right.
Utility poles are more difficult. We do show a cross-section up on the first page. We show like a parkway strip with a, say, a tree, sample tree, and a sample existing utility pole. Utility poles are approximately every 125 feet.
And also driving over, I saw a lot of like some private residents. I don't know if they own it or how they did it, but they have like stone retaining walls that again go like right up to the street. I assume those have to be moved, and if they do we pay for that? Does the homeowner pay for that? How does that work?
Yeah, those are what I mentioned at the last meeting. There's a lot of constructed parking spots that are in the right-of-way. With the design without retaining walls, those residents will likely lose those benefits.
So, but the retaining, because I imagine the parking spot's easy just to pave over, but you know they're literally like retaining walls that look pretty heavy duty. They go right up to the. So, who pays to get rid of those?
We may have to pay to get rid of them, depending how far they intrude into the work area we want to do for the individual lots.
And we haven't priced that out yet.
That's part of the estimate I gave, I believe, last week in the range of $400,000.
So
that's site grading.
Inclusive of moving all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And I know, just a point of, I guess, just I don't know what to call it. at some point, we probably should talk to those people, because I don't know if they even know we're having this discussion.
I do know a lot of residents have been very interested in this. I got an email just before tonight's meeting, and I told them this was a topic of discussion.
Right.
I don't know if any of them are watching on television. Once we have a direction we're going to go, we're certainly going to send a letter out to the residents advising them what the village's intentions are, how it may individually affect them.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of where we come out on it, like, they should know about it, and they shouldn't find out about it when you guys show up, you know, to put the
No,
sidewalks in.
we normally have a meeting with the residents who are affected.
Yeah,
And we show them the plans and we explain it to them.
Okay.
When we did some of the other sections of sidewalks, we had a lot of interaction with the residents. I believe Ms. Reynolds was out there in a couple of those field meetings with some of the residents who were less than thrilled with the ideas. Feel free to speak of it.
But, I mean, there were several residents who were furious. They didn't want it. They didn't want their trees moved. They didn't want a sidewalk. But you guys did such a beautiful job. Nobody would even know that those sidewalks were not there a year ago. They look like they've always been there. It's wonderful.
The north side did come out very nice. We did have to move some shrubs. We did have to buy some shrubs. Again, in addressing some of the residents' concern, we felt we were always well within our rights as a village because we were working within the public right-of-way. No land takings are needed, and no land takings are anticipated for this phase of the work either.
And to be clear, my point's just merely on notice, not on where we come out on this. They should just know about it, but please go on.
We'll have our usual communication effort. As Heather said, just like when we pave, we hand out a letter. We don't put it in a mailbox because then the postmaster wants his VIG. So we knock on doors, we give it to people, and usually we have contact information for the inspectors, contact if they have questions on what the project is.
15 houses, Dwayne? That's the total?
Yep, 15.
And Matt, it's the right of way, right? We have the right to do it?
Yeah, if there is a parking space in the right of way, or if there is a retaining wall in a right of way, certainly we own the right of way, and actually, yeah, we have access to it, we have authority over it, and there shouldn't be any impediment to it. They don't have a legal right, a legal challenge to it. So, as been pointed out, there are discussions that take place. Some are certainly willing to accept sidewalks, some are not, but that's something that you've got to deal with on a homeowner by homeowner basis. So each one of these has to be looked at separately and determine just what needs to be done in front of that particular house and how we approach it. So.
Chris, aren't most of those that have created parking spaces in front of their houses, aren't they towards the east end?
They're more towards the down gradient section of the roadway in eastbound direction.
When I go further west, those houses still have quite an incline down to the street.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine cutting into that incline and not having a retaining wall.
Again, when we designed this project with full retaining wall everywhere, the retaining walls were almost $1 million charge.
So if we were to continue from these three houses that already have the easy ones, if we were to continue eastward, we're going into the most expensive portion of this project.
The first several houses, not so much. As we start to go down the slope, that's where it gets more expensive.
Which of the houses have the most slope?
I'm going to be guessing it'd be probably right in the vicinity, 3-4 houses either side of Alpine Terrace.
So like 204, 200, 196? Yep. That's where it starts.
But Chris, S Hill seems to be a very, that's a funky intersection. It's like 5 streets coming into. What is your proposal for that area?
What we propose to do is not quite is only shown very slightly on this drawing that you have and is up on the screen. Jovan gave me a sketch earlier this evening with an idea for bumping out S Hill, bumping out Heights across the street a little bit, constructing a crosswalk, and they're possibly making S Hill one way in one direction, downhill, and possibly eliminating the left turn, because even now, a left turn going down to go
It's
west.
a nightmare. I can't even imagine how you do that.
It's a trick.
So Jovan is recommending kind of shortening the crosswalk by bumping the road out.
Yes. We have a sketch of that. It just didn't make it to the drawings before you, because even the drawings before you are a work in progress.
Okay. And bumping out Hillcrest as well to make...
Yes, because Hillcrest has what you could say, a very wide throat, much wider than is necessary.
Right. It's huge. I mean, to me, those things that you just mentioned are really almost the most important. And I think it's the area we need to start with. That will improve safety right there by doing those. It doesn't seem like a huge, bumping out the road, I don't know. But S Hill, I believe there's probably a decent amount of trees that will need to get taken down.
Again, we didn't identify which trees we'd have to remove yet. We want to finalize this. And let me clarify, the portion of Heights that we're indicating bumping out is on the north side of West Glen. We didn't touch the intersection with Heights on the south side that goes southward, because that also is an extremely wide roadway.
It is.
We're going to maybe take a look at what we could do there also. We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Right. No, I mean, when I was there the other day, it seemed like both areas could handle a bump out, and it would.
We feel
safer.
also the portion of Heights that goes south from Glen, that may be even large enough for a pedestrian refuge island. That's another technique to use. We have installed a couple of them in the village. They've been very well received. Probably the most popular one is where the rotary clock sits, because 18 years ago, it was 93 feet from Ridgewood Coffee to Van Ness. Chief Corcoran at that time, he and I had conversations about how many pedestrians are in that crosswalk on a Saturday night and the need for something. So we worked on a design and we built it.
So the estimate you gave us last week for $300,000 for completing this, that I assume did not include the two bump outs that we just spoke about?
We haven't really priced the bump outs yet, but I would say they would keep everything under 400 for the whole project.
Because to me, whatever we do, I think we should start at S Hill and go up towards North Monroe. Because like you said, those first few houses at North Monroe are still pretty level. There are still areas, if people are walking on that side of the street, they don't have to go into the street to walk. Whereas if you started at the top where the sidewalk currently ends, and then we end up stopping somewhere at Alpine, the most dangerous part, in my opinion, is from Alpine to S Hill. You are walking in the street no matter what. Like that's the area that has to have a sidewalk.
Again, it's pretty much predicated on what kind of funding you folks in the council will provide for us. Whatever amount you provide, we can build to the max, to that amount.
I agree with Lorraine.
Woo!
Yeah, that intersection is a tough place to cross. It's so wide. You have so many streets coming and going from there. It's as steep as anywhere. I know one of the people from the neighborhoods asked that if we are not going to fund the entire project this year, that we start at S Hill, and I think that that's definitely the way to go, and I certainly would like to address that intersection and the way you're talking about it sounds like a good way to go in terms of, and look, you guys are the traffic experts, but the one way going downhill with no left turn would seem to be a pretty obvious choice.
That is a suggestion. I just sprung it on Jay tonight, surprised Jay, but he has his own thoughts on that if he wants to give them to you.
Jay?
I think it was a good spring. I think whatever engineer designed every one of these intersections is the same guy who designed the skyscraper in Ghostbusters.
Wasn't me.
It's just ridiculous. So, I mean, this road is just, we get lucky with the intersections. Our accident rate is pretty low compared to how unmanageable these intersections are.
You had to say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, our biggest concern daily is speeding on the road. I'm sure you guys noticed that that's probably one of our heavily enforced speed areas. But it's really hard here. We can't even, because of the grade and the curve and everything, we can't even line up the cars to do radar on the top half. So we kind of have to wait until they get below. I'm sure you also know that you always think you're driving in that one guy's driveway over by Upper, and every time it gets icy, someone does. So this road is just inherently difficult to manage. So trying to keep people from crossing the street left and right is definitely the positive move here.
On this map, I can't tell whether the brown sections are sidewalk or are they retaining walls or something
They're
else?
graded. That's grading on the land.
Oh.
The sidewalk has little bits that look like
yeah.
aggregate in it.
The speckly things.
The speckling, yes, speckling.
So you're not showing where people currently have a retaining wall or a driveway in these drawings?
Not in that great of a detail.
So could you give us an idea if we started at S Hill and worked our way up to Monroe, past Alpine, what would that cost?
That's hard to say because we just discussed the intersection bump outs and improvements down here by S Hill and Heights Road. Again, those we haven't priced those out. We haven't done any conceptual work yet on the southbound portion of Heights, where I mentioned we might consider an island. We have to take a look at that.
Okay.
I don't have any costs for that because we haven't gotten to any kind of fixed design.
I mean, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so is it possible, by next week or the week after to get us some estimates?
Maybe more like the beginning of June.
Okay.
I mean, that was my question, is that I really want to see this thing priced out and not just, not just estimates. Because I think we need to do this. I think we need to do something here. But it's really hard to plan what we can do based upon, numbers that are not hard and fast. I definitely think we need something about S Hill. I would like to see, what we could do in terms of sidewalks. But without real estimates and hard numbers, it's hard to, I think, have a conversation that's going to advance the ball. And I think it's time, given that I think it's so rare that all five of us agree on something, and here I think we all do, that something needs to be done here. It's just a matter of what, and until we have hard and fast numbers, it's hard to sort of plan. So if it is going to be June, as long as we know these are real numbers, I'm willing. I'm not happy about it, but I'm willing to wait because I think that's got to be the next step, is to get real numbers.
You won't have real numbers till you go out to bid. You realize that. You'll have real numbers with the bids, but you'll have a good estimate.
Good estimate.
You'll have a better estimate.
I mean, I'm not asking Chris to hit it on the nose.
You'll have a better estimate.
Right, but I mean, right now I know he's doing his best, but he's giving us round numbers, and I want to make sure that we've got numbers that are closer to your point.
I agree.
Well, and we also just introduced a new concept to this, which is,
What we usually do for our estimating purposes, we use the previous year's bid. So we do have a 2023 paving bid. The low bidder's numbers is what we would plug in. We'd measure linear footage of curb, square yards of sidewalk, and we would use those numbers from the most recent bid. Is it 100% accurate predictor? Not necessarily, because bidders sometimes adjust their numbers to try to become the low bidder.
I want to just say a couple of things. First of all, this is awesome. This is so great to see it, and I think we all agree that taking the bulk of the cost and getting it down from $1 million to $300 was a good move. I am a little concerned about the neighbors and the actual notice, so I'm hoping everybody is on board from the neighborhood. I mean, it's the right-of-way either way. I also agree that the intersection warrants a look. I love the snapshot that you have here. I was joking, this is a joke, to Heather today. I said, let's just put a no left-hand turn in today and make it safer. But I would, too, like to see the other side of Heights Road, because that is the longest section. So if we could, get more of an estimate than a guesstimate on sidewalks #1, intersection, this version, and then intersection with the pedestrian island as well, that would be great. I think it's wonderful, and if we can gain efficiencies and do it, in a bulk, I'd be on board on that, but we definitely need the pricing. And I really just want to thank you. I know that we ask for a lot, and this is wonderful, and I feel like we can see so much more and understand the scope so much better.
So our next meeting is the 24th of May, and then the next one after that is June 7th. Either way, it goes to the June public meeting. So why don't you see what you could do?
June 7th.
June 7th, okay. We'll count on it.
Thanks, fellas.
One more question. How many speed limit signs are there starting west of Monroe to warn people what the speed limit is?
I have no idea. That's a big test.
I'll
get it for you tomorrow.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's a big test. You got me on that one.
West of Monroe? So that's going to Midland Park.
I think you mean coming down the
Yeah.
Yeah, eastbound from Monroe.
Yeah.
The speed limit is 25 miles an hour.
I understand that. But they're ignoring it. How many signs are there is my question.
They're ignoring it. It is a county road. If we ask the county for a speed study, they'll make the speed limit 35.
Yeah, the one thing we have to be careful with that road is that it is a truck route. So it is heavily regulated.
Is your microphone on?
Is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing we have to be concerned about with that road is that it is a designated truck route, so it's heavily regulated. So sometimes we have to tread lightly with what we do there.
But we've had that in the village on other county roads where there was a request to lower the speed limit, and in discussion with the county engineering department, they said, we'll do a speed study. Don't be surprised if we raise the speed limit. It's under the heading of be careful what you ask for. Because the county, as an aside, the county is not a complete streets county. The village of Ridgewood believes in complete streets.
Okay, thank you.
Can we put speed limit signs on the county road or no?
As long as it matches the speed the county agrees to.
Okay.
We can't make our own speed limit.
Got it. No. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. And Chris. And now the last item in budget is the Kingsbridge Lane pedestrian bridge. So you have a summary from Eric Lahita of the design to repair the bridge, which is approximately, if you add up the numbers, it's approximately $625,000. We've already spent $32,125 for the repair, and that estimate came in at $396,192.26. So the combined total is $428,317.26. So it's almost $200,000 difference to replace it as opposed to repairing it.
So you said 429 to repair?
428, 317, 26. Just because I took the engineering cost that we've already spent and added it to the 396.
And the difference, one of the differences would be that the new bridge would be ADA accessible.
Compliant, correct.
Yes.
Correct.
And would that be the major distinction here? I'm sure there's other little odds and ends.
Yes, a new bridge would be required to meet the requirements of ProWag and accessibility. The repaired bridge does not. So if there's a concern about making the bridge ADA accessible, the new one is the way to go.
Which is about 50% more, but it's ADA accessible.
I did have some conversation with the U.S. Representative Gottheimer's office on this. They asked if we had looked into any grants. I had not, but they offered their assistance if a grant comes up, and we need some affirmation of support.
The repair versus a new bridge, do you know how long each would take?
The repair probably, if we bid it out in the next, say, this month or next month, it might get completed this year, might not. I don't have a timeline yet. A new bridge would be a prefab bridge, ordered from a manufacturer. I don't know what the lead time on that would be.
Okay. I mean, ADA compliant, means you're, well, partially, some people would be in a wheelchair.
Wheelchair, handrails, the ramp would have to be no more than a certain slope, because if you may not be in a wheelchair, you may have trouble walking, and any upward incline can start to be difficult for you.
So I remember last year, I think you were saying if it was ADA compliant, it would have to be much higher, right?
The bridge may have to have a higher decking. You have to have the approach ramps on the Kingsbridge Lane side. We'd have to look at whether we do a single long ramp or whether a switchback ramp would be constructed.
Because if you did a single long ramp, wouldn't you be into the road at Kingsbridge Lane?
You could
No.
follow the sidewalk.
What?
We could follow the sidewalk.
Okay. And I mean, but just say we did a new one and somebody's in a wheelchair, when you get to the other side.
The other side, East Saddle River Road, that's going to be a challenge for a number of reasons. We can design a bridge to be ADA accessible. However, once you're off the bridge, you're still on East Saddle River Road, and there's nothing there in the way of sidewalks.
Right.
So
it's
you
almost more dangerous.
Yeah, you would be dumping or you would be discharging a disabled individual in a wheelchair on a road that has no further way for them to go.
Right. So that seems crazy. Okay.
We could build more sidewalks on East Saddle River Road. Again, it's also a county road. Any work we did on the bridge, we have to make sure we work with the county engineering department.
I think the thing that I feel compelled to say is that there's a social responsibility for new construction to embrace all of our population, and the bridge requirements, that's where the ADA comes in. And to Chris's point, we just had a road that's never had sidewalks, now moved to sidewalks if we don't have the compliance issue met, and then next year, that becomes a road that needs new sidewalks. There is the social responsibility for new construction to be ADA compliant. And I think bridges, have a span, and unfortunately, they are dumping you into a street, but I think the state and these laws, hoping Matt agrees, are a good thing because they force municipalities to honor people who are disabled. So, I mean, it's a tough one because can that road accommodate sidewalks in the future? And
East Saddle River Road?
Yeah.
Yes, but it won't be cheap.
Okay. I'm learning that.
Would you be taking up part of the road, though? Is there enough
We-
room on,
If the village were to put in the sidewalks, we'd have to work with the county. We'd have to see what the minimum lane width they would want to have, see how much of the right-of-way we had to work with. The roadway may, if we are in the, say we have a 50-foot right-of-way, we may have to shift the roadway eastward to create enough room in a right-of-way along what is the southbound direction of East Saddle River Road to construct the sidewalk.
So take property away from the,
No, not taking
well,
property.
the
We'd have to
easement.
work within the right-of-way.
Right, within
The
the
actual
right, okay.
traveled way may have to shift a little over. Usually you center them, so you'd have, say, 30 feet of pavement, 10 feet on either side for the right-of-way.
Right.
We may have to shift over 5 feet to gain 5 feet for where we would want to consider a sidewalk.
Okay.
Again, that's something that we'd have to present to the county. They would have to have an agreement with that proposal.
And like you said, the county doesn't believe in,
They're not a complete streets community, but they're looking at traffic movement. So, again, we'd have to make sure that putting in a sidewalk wouldn't impede traffic movement, because again, East Saddle River Road is also a busy street.
Thoughts?
I think we need direction as to what you want to do. Do you want to repair or replace? Because then he can proceed up until that time.
Well, the question is, do we want to repair or replace or not do anything this year?
Well, true.
Because
That's the other
At
option.
the moment, there is no money in the capital budget for this.
Correct.
So.
There is 67,000 from the original 100,000.
Right.
That's it. So that's all we have. We would have to bond in
Right.
order to do it.
So the issue would be that somewhere in the $500,000 range, give or take, depending upon whether we repair or replace, we would have to exceed our regular bond allotment that we use every year. So in that regard, what are your thoughts? Do we want to bond for this amount, which is not what we normally do, in order to begin this project, or do we want to put it off?
Can I
for a
just
year?
ask a quick question? With the West Glen Avenue sidewalks, where's that money coming from?
We would be, what we talked about was taking $100,000 from the capital budget from Shedler. That's what we talked about.
So can I ask a question, because I wasn't on the council, and I asked Chris for some history. What was the thought methodology of rejecting the $325,000 in 2021, when the price was lower, before we went back out? In 2021, the proposal then, which was a whole different year, was $325,000 with an upper threshold of $375,000.
Yeah, in 2021, we contacted a couple of bridge manufacturer. We met with them on site. We discussed the project for a factory-built bridge. It was in the 325, 375 range. I presented that to the council. There seemed to be a lot of attachment to the current bridge at that time.
Like emotional attachment, or just?
To repair it rather than
Well,
replace
the feeling
it.
was to repair.
The feeling
right.
was, the feeling of the council at the time was to repair it, not to replace it. So I proceeded to solicit an engineering firm through the proposal process. That's how we got Lahita Engineering. We issued an award to them, and they prepared the plans that now give you a cost to rehabilitate the bridge.
Right.
We could bid the rehabilitation in a matter of weeks. If we wanted a new bridge, I'd have to get a change proposal from Lahita. They have a lot of the engineering already done. I don't know how soon they'd have something to bid out.
I was just curious, because it's 2 years later, and now it's effectively $100,000 more. Regret's a wasted emotion. I was just curious as to why, at that point, that seems like a economic, I don't know if it was funding then.
My recollection is that at that point, we were looking for a less expensive alternative, which of course, we were penny wise and pound foolish, and should have jumped on it then. But that was, as I recollect.
No, yeah, we were looking to
Yeah.
repair it for less money rather
Right.
than replace it.
And my recollection is
Yes.
also that we were reluctant to take on the burden of the ADA sidewalk and ramps.
I mean, my take is that I have trouble making a decision on this without also considering West Glen at the same time. And not that I want to keep kicking this can down the road, but until we kind of know what we want to, until we get, I think, the estimates on West Glen, I think that to me is going to be dispositive, because we're going to do something extraordinary here and either bond additionally or work out something else, which, again, both projects are worthy of. We may want to do one, not the other. We may want to do a piece of one and not the other. Until I kind of have a better picture of where we are with West Glen, I kind of don't want to make a call on this, because ultimately, if for some reason, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, but if we decide, all right, we can't do West Glen, maybe this becomes more of a feasibility, or if we say, you know what, West Glen has to get done, and this is what it's going to cost, and it's going to come out to X, maybe then that becomes a priority. I don't know. I have not made up my mind yet. I'll be very clear on that, but I think we got to make those decisions in tandem, is my point.
Other thoughts?
I agree with Evan.
I agree as well. There's going to be a capital shuffle, and we need to have an idea of how much capital is going to shuffle and from where. With that, Heather, would it be possible, now that the budget's passed it, if we could get a list, a verified list of all the capital and all the expenditures that we went forward with? You know, like refined.
Sure, they're in the bond ordinance that you got, but I can send that out again. That's fine.
Like in Excel, so we could move it around and get, if we can.
And I'm sorry.
I don't think it's in Excel.
Okay.
But maybe finance has it in Excel, so I'll see.
And I'm sorry, and just to be super crystal clear, can you just repeat again, what is the price for a brand new bridge all in, and what is the price to repair a bridge all in?
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
So just to be clear, and I got to get a longer microphone, what is the price all in for a new bridge and the price all in to repair the bridge?
All in to repair the bridge is the number Heather quoted you, which would be the estimate from the engineer for $396,192, plus the contract they had to design it for $32,125.
That's about 432-ish, right?
Yes.
To repair.
And the only thing that would add to that is if we wanted to retain the designer to provide construction oversight services or periodic visits to see that the work was done in a manner consistent with what they specified.
And the new bridge all
New
in?
bridge, we're looking at the estimates from my conversation with Eric Lahita is approximately in the range of $550,000. Add to that engineering design services of approximately $50,000. So you're looking at $600,000.
Design services of how much?
About $50,000.
50.
And then construction oversight, yeah.
And construction oversight would be roughly $25,000, depending on the level of services.
The numbers are basically 4.25 to repair, and 6.25 to replace.
Thank you. I like round numbers. Thank you.
And Evan, we have 67,000 rollover capital for the project.
That's what we have left over from the very original capital appropriation for this bridge.
Great.
So, and if we feel these numbers are solid, I want to hear the solid numbers on Glenn.
We're pretty confident, Eric and I are pretty confident in the numbers. They used a standard estimating program called RS Means. I've used that also in my career. It is pretty accurate. That being said, if we have something to upset the markets, another Ukraine war, China invades Taiwan, all bets are off.
No, we could make the same mistake that was made 2 years ago. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, original price was at the beginning of the pandemic. Then we had the pandemic. We had a significant shortfall in materials and supplies.
We probably, if we would have gone with that original price, I'm guessing that there would have been a lot of change orders and increase, like.
It depends if we get them under a contract. If they sign a contract to provide, say, a bridge for X, there isn't necessarily a lot of wiggle room. Matt could comment better if a force majeure
Right,
would
but
be
I'm saying
applicable.
by the time we would have signed the contract, we probably would have already been, like, I think that they would, well, whatever.
It's impossible to say.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to point out, too, if we decide to reappropriate money for this project, we would have to introduce a new ordinance to rename it. So that's another 2-month process plus another, 20 days from publication for it to be effective. So it's almost like 3 months before you'll be able to have that money available. So,
But Glenn.
as opposed to Glenn,
would be ready.
where we can use the money from Shedler for the sidewalks because of the way that it's worded.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Very
You're
helpful.
welcome.
All right. So, let me find the agenda. The next one is the Village of Ridgewood Citizens Guide to Public Comment. So you have both the red line version and the clean version. So it basically goes through, how many meetings there are a month, how voting is scheduled, what a resolution is, what an ordinance is, how the mayor is the presiding officer, how point of order is called, and then public comments, how that proceeds, how you have initial public comments for 3 minutes, and then you have additional public comments at the end. You also have a public comment for ordinances on second reading, and then how they come up to the lectern. They are recognized on a first-come, first-served basis. And then also what's in the code book about personally offensive or abusive remarks not being tolerated. And so that's basically it. I don't know if Councilmember Winograd wants to say more.
So a long time ago, when Pam and I were both not on the council, we were participating in a program through the League of Women Voters called Observacor. And what we would do is, as citizens, come and observe the meeting and write up notes. And obviously, public comment's a big part of the meetings. And with that, we became, me personally, versed in how public comment works, how many options there are, how many opportunities. We discovered at some point that there are ordinances on the books of how it works. Just a little fun fact, because I hear civics education is on the decline. The mayor, one of the roles and responsibility that the mayor has, because we have a non-powerful mayor role, is that they act as the chair of the meeting. And that often, when we bring new people in here, people ask the same questions over and over. This by no means is to tell people what they can say, any of that. It's more of a touchstone of when organizations or people want to come, how does it work? How many public comments do you have? How long is it? Over the past, since I've taken office, I know there's some confusion on initial public comment even. The Shade Tree Division, when we were talking, was saying, well, why do you cap it? And there are reasons why initial public comment is capped, so the duration of the work can occur, so our staff can go home. And so this was my attempt to sort of put everything that I learned while being a citizen that I thought would foster information and communication, so when people wanted to come, the rules were sort of outlined. I think it's pretty solid. I will say that, because I told Matt Rogers, there's a lot of versions out there, and I think this is 99%. I think Matt needs to look at it again. But the goal of this was so people could understand, what is a work session? What is public comment? How does it work? When can we be there? One of the most interesting things I learned as a compliment to us is by law, we only have to have one public comment, and we have two. And I think that's great. I also think it helps people understand, is a resolution or an ordinance more powerful? And it's actually the ordinance turns into an actual code and a law. So it's pretty basic. It's my best attempt to sort of detail this. So when new people want to come, or we have student groups, we can send this to them. It can be posted on the website, and we could make it, the original version was more like a scroll. We could put our seal on it, and I do just want to say the original title was a little intense, and my niece, who's a freshman who loves history, Matt Rogers at the gym and Paul on Main Street, and she said, I think the Citizen's Guide is a much better name. So I just wanted to thank my niece for her participation and for everybody who talked to her. And I'm hoping everybody can read it, and then we could kick it back to Matt for the final review.
Okay. And if I may, I did get a chance to read this and compare it, and I know that what Heather has said and what Siobhan has said all deal with the public's understanding of public comment and how that works. As I'm looking at this, you could really throw you can make it into a 20-page document if you wanted to throw the law about a meeting into it. I see on the first page and on the second page lots of information about notice and about noticing the meetings and noticing the agenda, publishing the ordinances. I don't know that that's really, and that's going to be up to you guys, but I don't know that that's really something that's needed for the public to understand about how public comment goes. So if I take a look at it, one of the first things I might be doing, unless you tell me differently, is that I'll probably be, redacting all the information with regard to notices being posted and put in a newspaper and that type of thing. I don't think that's necessary, but that's going to be up to you guys.
So can I ask, do we adopt this as, formally? Is this an informal sort of agreement that will post this? What exactly is the governance around this?
It's not an ordinance, all right? This would be a resolution just to adopt and support, in support
So
of
it's not really
providing
legally
this on the website.
So, I mean, my take on it is I think it's great. I think it's great that we're laying out what we do and doing it in plain English. I do have some concerns about the language in the end about offensive remarks. Not that I like being on the end of offensive remarks, but I'm a big fan of the First Amendment. There's a reason why it's the First Amendment. I get some comfort from the fact that this is not then a legal document. It's not law. It's a guide. It is what we think you should do, not necessarily what you can do. And people, I guess, can get up and do what they want, and until they become overly boisterous and disruptive, in which case it's no longer a First Amendment issue. At that point, I think we're rightfully so can shut down speech. But I think putting this out as a guide and something that doesn't have the force of law behind it, but sort of what we expect from just Ridgewood residents and what we hold ourselves to that standard, gives me comfort around some of the language in there and my maybe First Amendment concerns. And I
there is language in here that mimics what we have in an ordinance. So, and the ordinances have been on the books for a while, and I believe withstand that aspect of it because the disruptive behavior of loud and offensive remarks and things such as that has been something that has been precluded in.
And I agree with that. But I mean, let's be candid. It says here you're not supposed to call out council people by name. I don't know. I got called out tonight by name several times, and we just sort of shrugged it off.
I have ruled from here a number of times that you can criticize and call a councilman's or a council person's name and criticize that council person. You can do that, but demeanor is an aspect that can be controlled,
right?
And that's it. So you can't call somebody's name out, and if that's in here, I think we would take that out.
It's not.
Yeah. So I mean, that's my concern on it, is just making sure that I guess maybe Boyd's going to challenge us, but I guess make sure that the legal limits of this are defined. And that
yes,
this
and I'll be careful about that and make sure that gets watched.
Yeah, again, because I am a huge fan of the First Amendment, but I do think we should try to let people know that there is a fair amount of decorum we would hope to maintain here, and and certainly if you get boisterous, that's not allowed. I think if you get up and say really slanders or certainly personal things about a councilman, perhaps at that point you've gone too far. But if I agree with the speaker all the time, then something's wrong, right? There's supposed to be disagreement here. There's supposed to be
able to criticize.
Discord. Yeah. So okay.
I mean, that's not in here too, Evan. Just so it's really an outline of how we meet, what we can do, how it's.
No, I'm just focused on the two paragraphs
just
at
not
the end. The rest is great. The rest is
I just
great.
want to make sure that we're not,
Yeah.
none of that. And to Matt's point, I did pull all the ordinance and took that language from something I found in E-code and looked at all of them. So it's open. Pam is a lawyer. She's gone back and forth. And I think the struggle was I wanted it to read, for regular people and, our civics groups that come and the students. So it's a balancing act.
So much of it reads so really, really well. I'm just focused on the two paragraphs at the end. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. I think explaining it to people is great. I'm actually going to take this with me. I think I'm talking to some Boy Scouts in 2 weeks. I'm going to bring it with me and hand it out.
This isn't approved.
Well,
don't hand it out.
I'm hoping 2 weeks.
Matt
Well, if it's not
Rogers.
approved, I will read from it and say these are my views. But I think it's a really easy way to explain what we do here, and it's great. It's good work. Thank you, Siobhan.
The part that's in italics was just there to show you that was my insert at this point in time. It doesn't have to be italicized, and the citation doesn't have to be there either, so you can take that out if you wish. I think the title is kind of narrow, and it really speaks to all procedure before the council. It's really a citizen's guide to village council procedure. That's all.
If you're talking about village council procedure rather than the public comment, involvement of a citizen, there's a lot more to council procedure than what's in here.
Well, we could take it to public
So that's why
participation.
you should really got to watch how you say it.
And you know, to that end, I'm fine with a citizen's guide to public comment for a couple of reasons. First, I echo Evan's remarks about the word guide. It's a guide. You know, it's what we hope to achieve. I've said it in here a million times. It's just what we hope to achieve. It's what we're shooting for. And we all cross that line every now and again. But we're all trying. In terms of this being more than public comment, there's a little bit in here that talks about how often we meet and our notices, which is a little beyond public comment, but it just gives the reader, the new person coming to our meetings, some idea of how we function, how often we meet. I'm personally good with a citizen's guide to public comment because I think that that's generally what this is. It's when you can come, how often you can come, how long you can speak for. You know, I think Matt's comments are well taken, that perhaps he wants to take a look at the notice requirements that are perhaps not as necessary in this guide for someone coming to a meeting to understand what's going on.
I do just want to say, just some of the thought methodology is that you take for granted, when we were observers, and I'm hoping Pam would, you know, following the agenda, looking for the agenda, I do think it's important for people seeking information to know that we are required to post it. And I thought, you know, when you think about coming to a meeting, and you know, being new up here, I was just recently on the other side, you have to think of how am I going to get there? Where would I find the information about what's going to be on there? Is it a work session? And some of that language, you know, for me, took me a bit. So I did like the notice, because then you know that it's got to be up, right? And
But we don't cover all the aspects of notice.
I know.
And that's the problem, because if you're just going to say, we are required to post it, but you've got other issues with regard to the agenda, 48 hours in advance. You've got a number of things that if you're going to get into it, you might as well get into all the facets of it.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why I said that, you know, it can get extraneous. It all depends upon the message you want to give, and it's going to be up to you guys. So.
Should we have something in here about how you can watch it on Swagit?
it's on there.
Oh, it is?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And I, last night, again, apologies, I think at 9 o'clock, Heather and I were going back, we did add a line in about hybrid, and so,
Okay.
I mean, I would, I do want to thank Heather, Matt, and Pam
there it
for
is.
all the help in this, and I think it's going to be a good thing, and I think the kids, you know, particularly the student groups will find this, and I'm hoping it's a tool for all of us, and I hope we get this draft right and we can publish it. So I think Matt's next, right?
I'll respond to this by Friday.
Okay.
You know, so you have it for the weekend.
Oh, I see where it is. It talks about the village website, but I think mentioning Swagit specifically is important.
Yeah, and I again want to thank Siobhan. When she gets hold of an issue, she really makes sure that she covers it head to toe. So thanks again, Siobhan.
Thanks.
Rescinding access resolution?
So the last item is rescinding a resolution that was adopted in 22-102, which provided access with additional structure, support, and direction, and it changed some of the appointments made to the Access Committee and changed the length of the terms. So because the original ordinance that created access delineated the terms. So both Councilmember Reynolds and Councilmember Winograd looked at this and said, really, it makes sense to rescind the resolution, because if we were going to amend an ordinance, we really have to do it with an ordinance. However, we have a choice. We can either say we do want to amend the ordinance according to what the resolution said, or we can say we should just rescind the resolution because the ordinance should stand as is. So that's what, I just need you to make a decision.
So Lorraine and I, this came out of our council chat, and Lorraine, jump in here, we both felt that the resolution no longer applied and would be easiest to rescind the resolution and let the ordinance stand. So,
That makes sense.
Sounds like a plan.
okay.
Okay, so we'll do that.
Good. And with that, we return to public comment.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I thought that we had discussed in the past about the Open Public Meetings Act and how there is no right for the governing body to censor comments from the public just because you don't agree with their comments. I know there was an instance where Ms. Weber was censored by the mayor because she mentioned Ms. Winograd's name. There was an incident just last week when the mayor stopped Mr. Hallaby from speaking because he said something that the mayor didn't like. That's got to stop. The Open Public Meetings Act of New Jersey specifically prohibits censoring people. Now, I see this Citizen's Guide to Public Comment attempting to do nothing but that, quite frankly. Quite frankly, I think posting it is an attempt to intimidate the public. Yes, an attempt to intimidate the public. There are a number of pieces of language in this document that are just inappropriate. It's subjective in nature. To say whether somebody is demeaning, offensive, abusive, or impertinent, all words that are used in the subject matter document, it's just subjective in nature. Who is to say whether somebody is demeaning? Who is to say whether somebody is offensive? Who is to say whether somebody is abusive or impertinent? Yes, it can be said when somebody is disorderly, or yes, it can be said when somebody is disruptive. Disorderly and disruptive, yes. Anything else is subjective in nature. And what you were trying to do with this document is intimidate the public. You were trying to have the public come up here and say only good things about you, only respectful things about you. If I don't like something you said, I will be disrespectful to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. The law says it. So don't post this document. It is an attempt to control what is said at the meeting. That is all it is. Everybody can see through it. As Mr. White said before, there are First Amendment rights, and you, at least as far as I'm concerned, will not stop me from saying what I want to say in this room as long as I am not disruptive or disorderly. Anything else is good to go. So why publish a document where you are attempting to do just that? It makes no sense to me. Oh, it makes sense to me. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to control the message, just as some Facebook groups try to control the message. Don't do it. The mayor last week said something about bring the lawsuit on when Mr. Halby said something. Do you really want a lawsuit? Because if I stand up here and I'm anything but disruptive or disorderly and you try to stop me, I will sue you. Because you can't do that by law. So let's give it up with respect to publishing documents, posting documents that are nothing more than an attempt to intimidate people from coming to the microphone and speaking their piece. The other thing I'd like to say, if I've got some time left, is $59,000 for garbage cans is a waste of money, an absolute waste of money. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyd.
Niti Mystery, 416 Colwell Court. I just want you to thank all of you again for coming back to the West Glen Sidewalk Project. I really appreciate it. Chris left again, and I wanted to thank him, Jovan, and the entire Ridgewood Engineering Department. I know I've personally sent him so many emails. I've driven them crazy. I know my neighbors have. So I want to thank them for the super quick turnaround and the updated design. I appreciate that, and I think I speak for the neighborhood residents as well. In terms of possible objections that may come up with a couple of the residents, I think it was just one or two residents. One of the residents, the former resident of 172 West Glen, has moved. The new owners are not in objection at all. They completely want the sidewalk. There may be one other person, and for that, I just wanted to say, my property has an easement on it. In front of my property, there's a sewer grate. The water drains from the side of my property in between the Yellow Valleys and the Shins, and I think drains into the creek on West Glen. When we purchased our house and we did some grading in our yard, they said to us, listen, this is village property. This easement belongs to Ridgewood. We suggest you don't put any permanent structures here, don't plant any trees. Hopefully we'll never have to come in and do anything, but in the event of a natural disaster or a problem, we have every right to come in and rip up your yard, take down your trees, rip up your bushes. That is our right. And, you know, unfortunately, that's the same situation with the residents that have put in the cutouts. While I sympathize with their frustration of having to give that parking spot up, it's really not their property anyway. And I don't mean to be mean, but that's just what it is, and we can't really sacrifice the safety of an entire community for the inconvenience of one. I just don't think that's fair. And also another thing that I don't think is fair is to kind of pit projects against each other. As someone mentioned at a previous meeting, like pitting Shedler versus sports people. You can't really do that. I also don't think we can pit, the footbridge versus West Glen. I understand they're both similar types of projects, but I think they're both necessary in different ways, and it would be wonderful if we can do everything to address everyone's safety concerns, but I don't think we should be in the situation where we have to choose. I think, again, there are ways to do everything if you bond and some of the other options that had been mentioned at previous meetings. But for now, I'm going to end positively. Thank you for revisiting. And I hope to speak to you again about this soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Niti.
Good evening again. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I'm not going to repeat what my husband said, although I agree with him on all of that. I don't always agree with him, but I agree with him on all of that. It's interesting that you're not writing a document that would be guidelines for your own behavior, because personally, if we're going to use subjective words like demeaning or offensive, I found it demeaning and offensive to have Miss Winograd refer to as everybody that it's being written for as regular people. What are regular people? I guess you guys are on a higher level and we're just regular people. I found it personally offensive, and in fact, I actually found it slanderous. So if you're going to use all these adjectives to try and regulate how we can speak, maybe you ought to write a document for how the five of you can speak. The lecture that we get at the beginning of every public comments, the first public comments from the mayor, is really an attempt, it's almost bullying. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say this, you can't say that. Okay, welcome everybody to come up. I mean, that's demeaning and offensive. That's assuming that people are going to be, rude, unlike, Miss Mystery, who's so polite all the time. She doesn't need to be read the riot act. It's like telling your kid before they go out, and don't you dare do this, and don't you dare do that. They haven't done anything wrong, and you're already yelling at them. So maybe you need to write a document. I don't think you should have any of these documents. They have no teeth. As my husband said, we can say anything we want up here as long as we're not boisterous or whatever, as long as we don't use vulgar language or threats. You can't stop us from saying what we like or don't like. But if you're going to do that to us, you need to do it to yourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Good evening again. Chris Dobson, 48 Eaton Court. I just want to also thank the council for having two chances to make public comment. Really appreciate that. I just wanted to leave here tonight with a peace of mind. Thank the village manager for answering my comments earlier. But my concern was really newly paved roads, that if there is something that can be put in place a definition of a newly paved road, for example, a period of a year, because I just saw too many examples of newly paved roads within 6 months, half of the side with the special project with the utility company is dug up, and then it has to be repaved again, half of it. So if they pay a fine, okay, say it's a $500 fine, but it takes $10,000 to repave the road, and the taxpayer is on the hook for that. And I saw the earlier comments about the need to hire additional police officers and everything, but that's where you lose money. So my recommendation would be is to have the fine be a percentage of the cost to repair. So perhaps 100%, and then over time the percentage comes down because of degradation and all that. So it's a recommendation that, you know, so many people take advantage of us paying a fine. Now, I never intended to comment about the guide, but I have a different take. I see so much division in the country where public session just goes into disunity and uproar. People treat each other so disrespectfully in terms of how they put their points across. So as long as you're not infringing on the First Amendment right and you have it as a guide, because not everybody has the same education. So you're actually probably just using it as a suggestion, a guide, but on the other flip side, you just make sure you highlight that it's just a recommendation, and everybody can unite and come together as one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Hallaby, I will tell you that we have about 3 minutes left, and I am just about to finish my statement, which is we have 3 people waiting on hybrid access, and we
have to give up my 5 minutes.
I didn't say you did. I was just telling you the state of affairs.
Okay. Now, my strong Rurik Hallaby, 1 Franklin Avenue. I suggest very strongly you change the title of the document from Village of Ridgewood Citizen Guide to Public Comment to Village of Ridgewood Citizen Guide to the way the village operates. No one understands how the village operates, how the village council operates. Once you have public comment, it means you're trying to tell us what we can and cannot say. And I tell you what, no one, even my best friend, is going to tell me what I can and cannot say. Okay? When I see something stupid being said at the dais, I'm going to point it out. If I see something mean being said at the dais, I'm going to point it out. And no one is going to stop me. Okay? So let's make it clear. So my suggestion is change the title of the document. I felt misled when I read it, which is why I made the comments before. Okay, now, as far as Shedler, many people probably don't appreciate what it is I'm trying to say or do. So that's why I will read a letter I wrote back in 2019 on the subject. 2019, way before anyone said anything about Shedler. So let me read a few minutes of time. Instead of zeroing in on just the Shedler house, which is, remember now it's the field. Before that it was the house. Why doesn't the council take a look at the Paramus Church, the Schoolhouse Museum, the Valo Cemetery, and the Shedler property as one integrated historical complex to be named Ridgewood Historical Park? Yes, I do care about history, though it doesn't mean I'm going to get my hands handcuffed by going to SHPO. The needs and uses can be addressed as one. And in looking at the park as a complex, one can address the Shedler house. How historic is the house? And considering limited resources, is it worth saving, and as what? One alternative to restoring the house, a hugely expensive proposition, this is 4.5 years ago, considering the state of disrepair, is to tear it down and replace it with a house with identical architecture that would provide fire and storm resistance for storing Ridgewood's historic artifacts. The Schoolhouse Museum would then be freed up as a venue for meetings and social events. In turn, the Shedler property could be turned into a beautiful park, 2/3 active, 1/3 passive. In looking at the historical park as a complex and addressing the isolation of Northeast Ridgewood, one idea I have broached in the past is to build a footbridge across Route 17 with one anchor close to the old Shell station and one at Shedler. Along with the footbridge, one could build a 12-foot wall along Route 17 that would offer soundproofing. One of the biggest games being propagated by some of you is this idea of, oh, the trees provide such soundproofing. They don't. I walked around Shedler in the middle of the winter, and you could see from all the way up 17, took my life into my hands, and I could look all the way across. There are no leaves, no protection whatsoever for sound. So before you do too many studies, and they did a study, we never heard the results. Build a wall if you really want to protect the people, etc. So these diversions and deflections don't make any sense. So that's why I support what it is you're doing as far as the playing field. And this idea of a sports complex is another silly newspeak. Oh, a sports complex. All at once you're selling hot dogs and you have people throwing peanuts at you. It's ridiculous, just ridiculous. Anyway, I appreciate the time. I appreciate how hard you work. And I really don't mean to be rude to anyone, but I do take my First Amendment rights very, very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hallaby. We are past 11 o'clock. We have 3 people on hybrid access. What is your pleasure, counsel?
I need to go home.
We do have, just for everyone at home, we do have a session after this in private, so we're going to be here till midnight. I say 10 minutes. We ask the speakers.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be talking about it for longer than they would be speaking. So let's just let them speak.
Well, and you'll forgive me, as I mentioned to you earlier, Lorena. I'm not feeling well right now, so I'm going to excuse.
I know, that's why I'm standing.
Yeah, I'm going to excuse myself. And Pam, if you'll continue.
Yeah. Next up, we have Susan.
All right, thank you. I hope the mayor feels better. Hold on.
Your name and address, please.
Yeah. Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. So I just understand that the council didn't make any decision tonight and that they're going to kick the footbridge down the road again, which will increase the price. I just want to put that out because that was something that is, concerning. That's what happened last time. The next is when you do the assessment for making the replacement bridge for if it's wheelchair compliant, please include sidewalks because it makes no sense to do all that work just to have wheelchairs go onto East Saddle River Road with busy cars. You have to realistically include the sidewalk price in that portion too, because you're just including $600,000, and that's for the bridge. Where do the wheelchairs go? When it was discussed for the trash cans, it was interesting that quality of life and infrastructure was discussed, yet, and that's just to describe a trash can. Yet the footbridge and West Glen are infrastructure problems. And that should be more priority than, I hate saying it, trash cans. And also the quality of life. I mean, our life quality for the people that commute has dramatically deteriorated here. And it's been for 2 years. with the footbridge closed. And also for the children that walk into town. The quality of life also for Shedler. They're going to be, they're going to, we're going to have a huge reduction in quality of life here, especially for people that live on West Saddle River Road. And then the last thing is, I hope the Village Council stops pitting neighborhoods against each other. To say that the footbridge or West Glen, that's just like trying to get us to be adversaries, which we're not. We're trying to work together because both are huge safety issues. And until they're addressed, it's not neighborhood against neighborhood. This is something that that needed to be addressed. I hate even saying it, more than Shedler. This was a project that was overdue for 2 years. Shedler came in into this council meeting, and that was front and center. And the footbridge in West Glen were completely forgotten about. So please stop pitting us against each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Kevin Wang? You're still on.
Hi, Kevin Wang, 147 West Glen. I'm going to make it quick. I'd like to thank the Village Council for discussing the West Glen sidewalk project again. It shows that you guys care for the safety of the residents, and it shows that you are listening. And special thanks to Councilwoman Reynolds for bringing the idea of starting the sidewalk from where it needs to start, which is the dangerous intersection of South Hill and Glen and Heights. During this meeting, today's meeting, one of the council members raised the question that if any of the residents affected by the West Glen Avenue are even aware of the discussion surrounding the project. I was quite appalled by this question because for the past few weeks, so many residents at Glen have come to the meetings to express their concerns and to advocate for the continuation of this capital project. This happened right in front of your eyes, and how could you even come up with that kind of question? I know many of my neighbors have been very closely watching these meetings, myself included. I have childcare duties, so I couldn't, make it to the meeting in person. But I've been on the meeting on Zoom since, 7:30. I know our neighbors, myself included, are watching. We're listening, and we're waiting. We're waiting for the council members, as some of you said, to knock on our doors and to discuss the project with us one by one. And finally, I want to give a big shout out to Niti Mystery, who is the best optometrist in town, for unofficially representing the West Glen neighbors to these meetings every single time. Thank you very much, Niti. And thank you, everyone, for your time.
Have a good evening. Mary Lou Handy is next.
Thank you very, very much. I was just thinking of a suggestion. Perhaps now that we have the
give your name
hybrid
and address, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Mary Lou Handy, 695 Kingsbridge Lane. What I was thinking is that perhaps in the future you might want to consider, perhaps with the opening remarks, maybe the people there in person. As the previous gentleman who just called said, he's been watching, and so have I. I'm a teacher. I was up taking my daughter at 5:30 this morning to football practice, and I have 2 kids in the high school, and I was working all day doing dinner. I just couldn't be there, but picking up from other sports. But in any event, and then have the remote comments or the hybrid comments go first at the end of the meeting. This way you would have both sides being represented and getting a chance to go first, because I guess we all tend to go a little bit too long than what we should do. So maybe there might be some thought to alternate, or maybe one in person, one hybrid, one in person, one hybrid. There are a couple of ways you might be able to balance both sides and letting us not keep you so late anymore. But anyway, I do wanted to offer that suggestion and to say, listen, you're like Solomon, you split the child in half. What do you do to try to find funding for two very important issues? We moved here, so we had the access of the bridge, and it was always there. Now it's gone. Our other neighbors want to go out and take their children for a walk, and they can't because of the safety. So I know you have a very difficult task, and I thank you very much. Thank you for being transparent and discussing it, and hopefully there will be some wise, Solomon decision in funding both projects, because they are safety, safety, safety. Good night. Safe home, everybody, after your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. We have no other, we have no other remote public commenters. So, do we take a motion to close?
Second.
No, you close public comment.
Oh, I'm closing public comment.
All right, and then we're ready for closed session resolution.
Before we go to closed session, I want to say something, and I wanted Matt to say something as well. First, one of the reasons we have a work session is to do work and discuss this. If you've ever worked with me on a committee, I'm a very good first drafter because I put it all out there, and I am taking the feedback on the document seriously. Words do matter. I do want to say that the bulk of this document wasn't about the actual what you could and could not say. It was how our meetings work, and we're looking for clearly, the title should be changed, and that's why we have these meetings. This is very important to me, because unless someone goes first and tries to put something out there, we're never going to understand what the response is. I feel, and I feel very strongly in this, that there's an opportunity to explain how this process works, and that's what this document was. It's 4 pages. There's 2 bullets regarding public comment. The language that I took was from an ordinance, but we would never put something out that touched on the First Amendment. We wouldn't. We have a lawyer up here for that reason. I think all 5 of us take that seriously. If the words weren't right in the draft, that's why it's a draft. I really feel this is a valuable touchstone. And if you didn't like it, write us and let us know what part you didn't, and we'll look into it. But we do have a lawyer here to make sure that we don't touch upon First Amendment, and I do believe all 5 of us feel very strongly about that. So that's it. The feedback, negative, positive, it's all good. It can be anything.
If I may, Pam. Yeah, I certainly respect the comments that were made about this document. I can tell you that in no way is it an effort to try and control what people say. People are allowed to say what they want. I would disagree with the speakers who said that disorderly and disruptive are not subjective. They're just as subjective as offensive language or slanderous remarks, or when somebody does get disruptive. One person may feel it's not disruptive, another person may feel it. But there is recognized rights of the chair of the meeting, particularly in a public meeting, to be able to control that and stop that behavior. And if it continues, they can take certain steps, which are outlined. But in any event, the effort here is to be informative. I'm going to review it in the next 48 hours, and I'll take a strong look at it in terms of the sensitivity to the issues that have been raised by the public comments, and make sure that it doesn't, number 1, infringe on anything to do with the First Amendment. Number 2, that it doesn't promote or give an effort to try and control what anybody says. If everybody's aware of what's gone on over these years, there have been times when the dais has made recommendations to censor people, and I've disagreed, and I've said that you are able to comment, you are able to direct your comments to a particular council member, you can discuss what they did, criticize it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if it gets disruptive, disorderly, slanderous, offensive, and the language that's used, then that can be controlled, and that's been part of the ability of a public meeting to control the behavior there. So those are things that don't violate First Amendment. But again, this document is meant to be informative. It's not an effort to try and control. So we'll make sure that it gets that way and gets to that point.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else on the dais? Okay. So.
Okay. Closed session. Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on May 3rd, 2023, at 7:30 p.m. or soon thereafter, as a matter on the agenda can be reached. And the said closed session will be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be further resolved that the matter to be discussed in closed session is limited to legal matters to include Shedler property. This matter is allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 at second. Be it further resolved, the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public once such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.